The Lord of the Depths, a Game of Thrones tale. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151. Goodbye Shrimphead. As Je prayed, Poseidon, who was sleeping in the deep sea, suddenly opened his eyes. A milky white light flashed across, and then he slowly closed his eyes. Poseidon spent most of his time sleeping in the deep sea near the Seeking Island. Now Poseidon no longer needs deep sea radiation to grow, and the power of faith is much stronger than nuclear radiation. So most of Poseidon is sleeping, and familiar with the power of faith. With the establishment of the Church of Poseidon on the Free Trade Coast, Poseidon has hundreds of thousands of believers, and the number is still increasing. With the increase of the power of faith, Poseidon has figured out a lot of things, such as how to become a true god with divinity, and his relationship with his father Jack. When Poseidon first looked into his soul, he found that his soul was a person who looked exactly like Jack. There is also a small soul body Jack in the center of the soul, and countless blow lines extend from the soul body Jack. These lines are intertwined and combined to form the external large soul body Jack, which is Poseidon's own soul. When he saw this scene for the first time, Poseidon finally knew why he could contact Jack through consciousness before he lost the power of faith. He didn't expect that his soul was supported by Jack's soul. The last Hearth City, the castle hall. Jack, who was talking, was suddenly stunned, but it only lasted less than a second, and Jack returned to normal, and no one else cared. After all, they were just discussing how to send troops, and it was normal to suddenly lose his thoughts. The current plan is this. First, clean up all the nobles who have not sworn allegiance in the east, west, and north of Hearth City. Those who are willing to surrender will be allowed to support the troops, and those who are unwilling to surrender will be killed directly, and the killers will manage the territories of the nobles who are unwilling to surrender. After everyone left, Jack called Daenerys to prepare to go to Seal Bay. But as soon as he went out, Jack saw a stunned scene. At this time, Drogon was shrinking under the wings of Caraxu. Daenerys looked unhappy. "You little bitch, I gave it to you, but why did you give it to me?" Jack was not polite at all, and he went up and slapped Daenerys' small buttocks. "What's the matter? My big son is not worthy of your black girl." Daenerys rolled her eyes at Jack. "Okay, no more trouble. I have to go to the Bay of Seals." The figure of the Ironborn appeared in the Bay of Seals. "I guess there are still castles occupied by the Ironborn in the north at this time. You come with me?" Daenerys nodded. "Well, I will go with you. After all, I came to Westeros to find you." Jack whistled, and Caraxu stood up and came to Jack's side in an instant. Seeing this, Drogon slowly came to Daenerys and gently rubbed Daenerys' face with the tip of his kiss. "Did you install the dragon saddle on Caraxu's back yourself?" Daenerys asked curiously. "That's right. Carax's back is too smooth, unlike Drogon's back, which has bone spurs that can hang you." Seeing Jack's teasing smile, Daenerys instantly entered the dragon spirit state. Drogon raised his head and blew a breath of dragon flame, but Carax blocked it with his wings. Jack instantly entered the dragon spirit state, and Carax took off into the air and flew northeast to the Bay of Seals. "Hiss!" Drogon roared, and after a short run, he also took off into the air and chased after Carax's back. Bay of Seals. The auxiliary wings behind Carax's tail crossed the water, leaving a long watermark, but it soon dissipated under the flapping of Drogon's wings. Carax was in front, and Drogon followed closely behind. The two dragons seemed to be a close couple circling each other. Soon, the shadow of the Poseidon appeared in Jack's sight. Carax roared to remind the people on the Poseidon, and then slowly landed on the deck. Along with Carax, Drogon also landed. After Jack and Daenerys came to the deck, Caraxu took Drogon to the sky. They would not leave too far, just hovering over the Seeking. "Your Majesty." Jess saluted steadily, and then asked someone to bring Shrimphead up. "Your Majesty, it's an honor to see you again. You are still so beautiful." "You are, Jess. You have changed a lot. I almost didn't recognize you," Daenerys said in surprise. She didn't expect Jess to change so much. When she first met Jess was just like a dead fish, without any emotional fluctuations. Now it seems that there are many changes. At least it doesn't look as lifeless as before. Thank you for your compliment, Your Majesty. Just as the few people were greeting each other, Walker dragged a person with broken legs over. Jack frowned, always feeling that the person in front of him was a little familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere. And Shrimphead was also stunned when he looked up and saw Jack, because he felt that Jack was also familiar, and there seemed to be an acquaintance between his eyebrows. Shrimphead man? Jack asked tentatively. Jack. Shrimphead blurted out, aren't you dead? Aren't you dead? Impossible, impossible. Shrimphead's expression became extremely terrified. A boy who was originally smashed to death by him actually reappeared in front of him, and he was the other party's prisoner. Is there anything more terrifying than this in the world? The answer is no. At this time, Shrimphead was already scared out of his wits, and he squirmed backwards frantically. Voke was a little surprised. Your Majesty, do you know each other? Puchy. Jack couldn't help laughing. More than knowing each other. 4 years ago, I was still a little pirate who followed my father to make a living. Once my father had an accident, this guy almost smashed me to death, and then ran away with the money. That was the first time I was so close to death. Jack briefly talked about the grievances between himself and Shrimphead, and Voke immediately kicked Shrimphead on the head. Bah, what a beast, Your Majesty. The interrogation has been completed. I suggest peeling off his skin. That's not necessary, we are not skinners. Just break his limbs and throw him into the sea. Jack said indifferently. Jack had an instinctive resentment towards the Shrimphead, but at the same time, if it weren't for the Shrimphead's behavior, Jack would not have traveled here. If he had caught the Shrimphead 3 or 4 years ago, Jack might have tortured the Shrimphead to eliminate the obsession of his predecessor. But now 4 years have passed, and the obsession of his predecessor has long lost its influence on Jack. So Jack did not choose to torture the Shrimphead. He disdained to do so now. The Shrimphead was just a little pirate. Seeing this, Walker did not hesitate to step on the Shrimphead's arm, then dragged the screaming Shrimphead to the edge of the deck, and threw the Shrimphead directly down. Chapter 152 Air to Stormland. The Shrimphead had his limbs broken by Walker, and was thrown into the sea. The Shrimphead slowly sank in the deep sea, and slowly lost consciousness, and then a thick tentacle suddenly rolled the Shrimphead into the abyss. On the deck, Jack learned from Walker the origin of the Shrimphead and the reason for his appearance in the Bay of Seals. At the time of the War of the Five Kings, Balon Greyjoy proclaimed himself king, and gave his daughter Asha Greyjoy 30 clippers, to plunder the north and attack Deepwood Motte. At that time, Theon Greyjoy betrayed Robb, and was assigned a longship, the Sea Bitch, from King Balon. Theon gloriously became the captain of the Sea Bitch. Later, Theon attacked Winterfell, and the defense of Winterfell was directly captured by Theon, but Theon did not have enough troops to defend the city. At the beginning, his sister Asha Greyjoy, that is, Yara in the TV series, persuaded Theon to retreat, because the Iron Race did not have the ability to defend the city deep into the continent. But Theon did not listen to his sister's advice, but insisted on staying in Winterfell to prove himself. But it was a pity that Theon's men did not want to die with Theon, so his men knocked Theon unconscious and left Theon in Winterfell. In the end, Theon fell into the hands of Ramsay the Younger. Facing Ramsay's endless torture, Theon seemed to have aged 40 years. When Asha and Theon met again, Asha almost didn't recognize Theon. From the explanation of the Shrimphead, Asha, who occupied Deepwood Motte, has returned to the Iron Islands to participate in the king's election. Because when Balon Greyjoy was crossing the bridge, he accidentally fell to death, and Euron Greyjoy returned to the Iron Islands just after Balon fell to death. Because Balon's legitimate heir was captured by the Bolton family and his life and death were unknown, the Iron Islands held a king's election meeting after 2000 years under the chairmanship of Balon's younger brother Aeron, his eldest brother Euron Greyjoy, his second brother Victarion Greyjoy, and his eldest daughter Asha Greyjoy will participate in the fight for the throne. Jack narrowed his eyes. Although the Iron Islands are barren, they are rich in iron ore resources. At any time, steel production is one of the most important industrial resources. As far as he knows, Euron gave a demagogic speech at the meeting. With the dragonbinder horn in his hand, he promised that the Ironmen would control the dragons to conquer the entire Westeros. In the end, he won the victory and became the heir of Balon. The soul of an old dragon is imprisoned in the dragon binder horn. Every time the horn is blown, it can destroy the will of other dragons, and then enslave other dragons with the dragon's power. But if the soul of the person who blows the horn is not strong enough, it will cause the soul to be burned by the horn, and the whole body will be burned to death. At the same time, Asher Greyjoy will realize that her situation is not good and run away, then return to Deepwood Motte, and finally be captured by Stannis. But now that Stannis is dead, Jack can just go to Deepwood Motte and wait for his chance, then capture Asher Greyjoy and rule the Iron Islands with her identity. In the original book, in order to prevent Asher from gaining support from other forces through marriage, Euron Greyjoy married Asher to Aery the Anvil Breaker without her knowledge. Jack certainly does not have enough manpower to turn both Westeros and Essos into a centralized system. That would require an unimaginably large bureaucracy. Otherwise, if local officials could not suppress the local nobles, it would be better to use a feudal system. So Jack plans to continue to use the feudal system after conquering Westeros, but the dukes of various places need to be replaced by his own people. For example, in the Iron Islands and Stormlands, the easiest way is to let Asher Greyjoy and Myrcella Baratheon give Jack a child, preferably a boy. As for monogamy, it only constrains the players, not the game rule makers. Go, take Borisaf, Uri and Ulrich to the last Hearth City. Voka, the Poseidon is now in your care. You don't have to stay in Seal Bay any longer, just go back to Poseidon Island. Voka frowned, then knelt down in front of Jack. Your Majesty, please let me follow you. If you continue like this, I'll go crazy. After a little thought, Jack nodded and agreed to Voka's request, and asked Go to take the Poseidon back to Poseidon Island, with Voka replacing Go. Go had no opinion. He would do whatever Jack said, and he had no subjective opinion on whether to fight with Jack. Then Jack went to the cabin, and pulled out Myrcella, who was hiding. Daenerys was a little surprised. Is this little girl your adopted lover? You like young ones? I remember you like mature ones, right? This is the third princess of the Baratheon family, the daughter of the usurper, Myrcella Baratheon. The usurper has 3 children, 2 sons and 1 daughter. His brother Joffrey Baratheon was poisoned at the wedding, and now her brother Tommen Baratheon sits on the Iron Throne. Daenerys' face suddenly changed. She didn't expect it to be the daughter of the usurper, but then Dany's face returned to normal. She smiled and touched Myrcella's head. This little girl is so beautiful. Are you going to take her in? Myrcella also looked at Jack. As a royal princess, she understood that she could not choose her own marriage. The only contribution she could make to the family was to form an alliance. If Jack married her, then her and Jack's children would be the legal heirs of the Stormlands after the death of Robert, Stannis, Renly, Joffrey, and Tommen. Jack nodded without any hesitation. When she is 14 years old, I will make her a princess, and when she has a child, she will be made the Duke of Stormland. Dany nodded. This is a good idea. She can bring Stormland under the rule of her bloodline. Myrcella's little face suddenly pulled up. Although she knew that she could not escape the fate of marriage, it was still very uncomfortable for her to be discussed about her future in front of her. Jack reached out and picked up Myrcella, then entered the dragon spirit state and called Korak down. The size of the dragon saddle is basically updated once a month. Although the seat is not very large, Myrcella's body is soft and boneless, and she can sit directly in Jack's arms. But Myrcella needs to stick tightly to Jack's arms. Daenerys also called Drogon, and then the 3 of them rode the dragon back to Hearth City quickly. And Walker and the other 4 took a small boat to the shore and rode to the last Hearth City. After everyone left, Go commanded the Poseidon to return to the Seeking Island. At this time, the Poseidon had been at sea for almost a year, and it was a good time to go back for maintenance. Chapter 153, Deepwood Motte and Lee of Caho. After returning to Deepwood Motte, Myrcella was brought to Hearthfoot, and Jack asked the servants to prepare a room for Myrcella. The nobles were extremely happy about Myrcella's arrival. Having a bargaining chip in hand was much better than going to war directly. With the bargaining chip, the negotiating position of both parties was directly tilted towards them, especially now that the Iron Throne always has a dead king. If the new king died one day, Myrcella's political status would be different. During lunch, Myrcella sat next to Jack and asked uncertainly, "Are you really going to marry me?" Of course, in the future, your child and I will rule the Stormlands, and you will be the Duke of Stormlands. Miss Ella looked worried and whispered, but I'm still so young, it's impossible for me to have children, and the Duke of Stormlands is my younger brother Tommen. Jack swallowed the bread in his mouth, took a sip of milk and said, your brother is dead. He was poisoned at the wedding. Now your brother is the Lord of the Iron Throne. But if your brother dies too, then there will be no heir to the Stormlands except you. Are you going to kill my brother? Miss Ella's face didn't look good. Can you not kill him? If you defeat him, can you spare his life? I'm willing to have children for you, and I can also persuade him to formally and reasonably give up the position of Duke of Stormlands to your child. I won't kill him, but that doesn't mean others won't kill him. If he can survive in the vortex of power in King's Landing, I will promise you to spare his life. In Jack's opinion, Tommen's character will be safe under Tywin's protection, but once Tywin dies, Tommen will inevitably be controlled by Margaery or Cersei, and he will inevitably die. What's the situation in King's Landing now? Daenerys asked suddenly. Chaos, not only in King's Landing, but the entire Seven Kingdoms are in chaos now. However, Dawn has already written to me that once the war with the Iron Throne begins, they will send troops from the south to the north. Our main and most important goal is to defeat the army of the Westerly. The Reach is most likely also a supporter of the Baratheon dynasty. In addition, the Riverlands, Stormlands, and the Crownlands are all under the control of the Iron Throne. As for the Vale, it is not so certain at the moment. The current Duke of the Vale is named Perilous. He is a very dangerous man. He is proficient in power and likes to create chaos. Daenerys shook her lips and said after thinking for a moment, the Vale has the natural barrier of the Bloody Gate. If you want to conquer the Vale, you have to wait until the dragon grows up. The Vale has the natural barrier of the Bloody Gate. External military forces can basically not break through the Bloody Gate. Aegon conquered the Vale with the help of a giant dragon. Jack shook his head and smiled. Don't worry about the Vale. I have 2 pieces of news in my hand. I will have people spread them out later. News? Can you tell me? Daenerys asked curiously. There's nothing to hide. I was going to spread it anyway. The first one is about the Vale. Lord Jon Arryn was poisoned. Lord Arryn was poisoned? Miss Ella said in surprise. After Jon Arryn's death, Miss Ella was still sad for a long time. Yes, Jon Arryn was poisoned by Petty Baelish and Lysa Tully. The second point is the death of Joffrey Baratheon. He was poisoned by Petty Baelish and Olenna Redwyne. Daenerys and Miss Ella were shocked. Miss Ella was shocked by Petty Baelish's ability to disguise, while Daenerys was shocked by this man's boldness. After dinner, Jack asked Daenerys to arrange for someone to prepare letters and then send them to the nobles in the Vale, Stormlands and King's Landing. As long as they were nobles, everyone should be sent a copy, regardless of the size of the title. At the same time, in a small village near the last hearth, a patrol team of the Children of Winter walked into an inn in the village. The team leader raised his hand and shouted, "Boss, give me 3 cups of ale, 3 sausages and 3 bowls of black bread and pickle soup." After Jack arranged the grain harvest, the price of goods in the area north of Hearth City fell slightly. The Children of Winter also had a monthly salary of 600 copper coins. Now a sausage and a cup of ale were only 2 copper coins. And these military salaries came from the reserves of Hearth City, as well as the land rent collected when harvesting grain. At this time, Jack's expenses for maintaining the Children of Winter and the Knights were very huge. Even with the newly collected taxes and the reserve funds of Hearth City, it would not last long, unless the entire North Territory was used to support these 2 standing army legions. At this time, another team of people suddenly broke in. After the 5 people looked around fiercely, their eyes suddenly locked on a woman in the corner, who was covered tightly. Adam showed a smug look on his face, and walked directly to the corner. He pushed away the guests who were eating along the way. As Adama approached, Alikar Stark, who was in disguise in the corner, began to tremble with fear. Soon Adama came to the table prepared by the Sons of Winter. At this time, the dishes had not been served yet, and the table in front of Dorne was kicked away roughly. Dorne was trembling with anger. Since joining the Sons of Winter, he was promoted to the captain of the scout team because of his good performance. Since then, he has never been humiliated like this. Whose people are you? You are so lawless, aren't you afraid of being eaten alive by the dragon? Dawn asked with an ugly face. Adama looked back when he heard it. He first looked at Dawn and found that Dawn had a long sword on his waist and the two people beside him had wooden handle axes. They looked like wild people outside the Great Wall. Are you a wildling? I heard that the wildlings who advocate freedom surrendered to a black fire bastard. It seems that the rumors are true. Did you exchange your freedom for that long sword? Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Adama's 4 men also laughed at him. They had heard in Kaho City that a black fire bastard of the dragon family appeared on the wall and subdued the wildlings in the Night's Watch with a dragon. In Adama's view, these were all lies. The dragons had disappeared for hundreds of years, and there was no such creature as dragons from the beginning to the end. These were just lies made up by the Targaryen family to maintain their rule. The so-called Black Fire Dragon Rider must be the Black Fire who recruited mercenaries from the other side of the Narrow Sea to defeat the wildlings. After the wildlings were forced to surrender, for their own face, they joined forces with the Black Fire Bastard to make up the lie that the dragon appeared in the world. Adama used to be a squire of a knight in White Harbor. He could read and write, and had seen the mercenaries from the other side of the Narrow Sea. After Adama was fired, he always felt that he was superior to others, and that he had insights and rational thinking that others did not have. Chapter 154. Then don't do it. Dawn stared at Adama coldly and slowly placed his right hand on the hilt of his sword. Ever since the wildlings joined Jack's army, many people mocked that the freedom spoken of by the free people was just a fig leaf for the wildlings. This situation was not alleviated until Jack issued a clear decree to enthrone the wildlings as citizens of the North. And the group of people in front of Dawn are obviously not subordinates of the nobles who surrendered to Jack. In this case, Dawn is not going to let this group of people go. Adama has not yet realized what is going on. As one of the few standing guards of the Karstark family, he is obviously used to being arrogant in the villages in the north. He thought he was still in the territory of the Karstark family, but he didn't know that this was the territory of Hearth City. However, Adama didn't want to fight with Dawn and the other two. After all, although they have 2 more people, it is difficult to guarantee that they will be unscathed in a fight. 3 of you, we are the guards of the Karstark family. The young lady ran away secretly. We have to escort her back. Don't make it difficult for us. Dawn exchanged glances with his 2 younger brothers. Haha, difficult? Then don't do it. Dawn said, and suddenly overturned the table in front of him. Adama was caught off guard by Dawn's sudden action, and could only draw out his long sword in a hurry. But before he could draw out his long sword completely, Dawn's long sword had already pierced his throat. The 2 people around Dawn also drew out their hand axes at the first time, to chop at the 4 people around Adama. When the opponent took out his long sword, another person was chopped down. At this time, there were 3 to 3 on the field, and Dawn's side had an absolute advantage. Then the 2 sides started a melee. Dawn was born a wild man, strong and healthy, especially after joining the Sons of Winter. He could eat every day, and his combat effectiveness was much stronger than that of ordinary soldiers. Dawn chopped down the enemy in front of him, and then helped the other 2 to kill the remaining 2 guards. Bah, what a thing. Take off his leather armor, put on a leather armor. Do you really think you are a knight? 2 Winter Sons immediately stepped forward to take off Adama's leather armor, and the long swords of the other 4 were also good things. Of course, the warrior outside, Dawn, would not miss it, and directly asked his men to lead it over. Dawn came to the corner, sat next to the girl and asked, "Are you a lady from the Karstark family?" Hearing this, the girl took off her hood, revealing a pretty face mixed with fear, which made Dawn's eyes light up. Yali is a tall, thin and lively girl with braided brown hair and a small chest. She is pale, with a long face, a pointed chin, small ears, and blue-gray eyes. Although she is not very beautiful, she is definitely not ugly. In addition, Yali is now like a frightened rabbit, which makes Dawn almost have bad thoughts. If Dawn had not joined the Winter Sons, he would definitely take Yali back to be his wife, but now that he has joined the Winter Sons, he must abide by the military regulations set by Jack. Yes, my name is Alice Karstark, thank you for your help. Alice now only hopes that Dawn has no evil thoughts towards her. The North is in great chaos now, and her worries are not unreasonable. After all, if the daughter of the Karstark family falls into the hands of bandits, it would be a good choice to exchange for money or enjoy it for herself. Ali's father is Rickard Karstark, who brought his 3 sons to fight for Robb Stark. After the Battle of the Whispering Wood, Rickard lost his second and third sons, and finally his eldest son was captured. It can be said that Robb really worked hard. As a result, Robb Stark's mother Catelyn Tully let the Kingslayer Jaime Lannister go, which is the same as treason, but Robb only put Catelyn under house arrest. Rickard was furious and led people to execute the 2 children of the Lannister family. Robb directly sentenced Rickard to death and executed him himself. Since then, the Karstark family has completely broken with the Stark family and returned to the city of Carter with their soldiers. Robb also lost 5,000 men. It can be said that Robb's failure began when he violated the marriage contract with the Free family, and the departure of the Karstark family only accelerated this process. Of course, the departure of the Karstark family made it one of the few families in the north that retained its strength. After Dorne got the reply from Ali Karstark, he asked directly, "Miss Karstark, why do you run around instead of staying in the castle to enjoy your life? You should know that the north is not peaceful now. My uncle wants to marry me to his son, so I'm going to flee to the Black Castle. I heard that there is a bastard of the Stark family there, and I want to seek his help." Ali did not hide her purpose. She really wanted to go north to seek the help of Jon Snow. In the original book, Ali was married to the leader of the Thenns. Dorne's eyes turned, and he immediately remembered the recent troubles of his leader. Dorne is a Thenn. The Thenn is the northernmost region outside the Wall. It is located in the valleys of the mountains and is hidden in the far north of the Frostfangs. The people of Thenn are called Thenns. The Thenns believe that they are the last blood of the first men. Their main language is the Old Tongue, and most people can only speak 1 or 2 words of the common tongue. The leader of the Thenns is the Magna, who they regard as a god, not just a leader. The Thenns are more civilized and closer to the people south of the Wall because they have laws and lords. The Thenns are violent warriors, but because they regard the Magna as a god, they obey orders absolutely and have much higher combat discipline than other wildlings. Their equipment is usually better than that of wildlings, including bronze helmets, bronze or stone axes, short spears with leaf-shaped tips, leather shirts with bronze sheets sewn on them, and simple leather shields with copper edges. Their last Magna was Stai, who was known for his iron-fisted military rule. After his death, his position was replaced by his son Segan. Segan was one of the senior generals of the Sons of Winter. His fighting ability and leadership ability were not inferior to Tormund, but Tormund had been showing off in front of Segan after being named an earl, which made Segan angry and envious. Dorne was a Thenn who was familiar with the south of the Wall, as could be seen from his proficiency in the common language. According to Dorne's idea, as long as he married this woman, Segan Magna could also be named an earl. Thinking of this, Dorne suddenly smiled, which made Ali's hair stand on end. She immediately felt that she was about to fall into the clutches of this man. Helpless Ali could only look at other people in the restaurant for help, but the others were either farmers or small vendors. How could they have the courage to provoke soldiers? Looking at the diners who pretended not to see, Ali also realized that there was no hope of relying on strangers, so she could only look at Dorne pitifully. Chapter 155. Do you want to become an earl? Miss Karstark, I'm afraid your idea can't be realized, Dorne said with a smile. Ali Karstark's face changed, and she showed a forced smile. I don't know which family you are from. Why do you say that my idea can't be tested? Ali Karstark had a very bad premonition in her heart. Could it be that she would eventually become a tool for her uncle to seize the city of Caho? Dorne first asked the boss to stew a chicken and serve it. As a wild man, he could see at a glance that Ali had not eaten well recently, and the haggardness on her face was very obvious. Then Dorne began to explain slowly, from the beginning when Jack came to the Black Castle and caught up with the Battle of the Black Castle, and then to conquer the Wildlings and the Night's Watch, to form an army and win over the northern nobles. What surprised Ali the most was Jack's identity. A descendant of Blackfy, not only married a wife of Orthodox Targaryen blood, but also hatched a dragon himself. This was too surprising. especially since Jack had established the Atlantis Empire. Once the North was recovered, it would be renamed the Northern Province and become an independent overseas province of Atlantis. The overseas province was the administrative agency that Jack was setting up. Although the overseas territories had to implement the feudal system, they could not be implemented completely according to the feudal system, otherwise it would be the same as having no rule. And Ali asked, "Can you take me to see His Majesty?" Seeing this, Doran smiled in his heart, knowing that Ali had taken the bait, so he immediately said that he would eat first, and then take Ali to the last half city after dinner. Soon, stewed chicken, sausages, beer, and black bread were served. Ali ate half a chicken without caring about her image. Doran shared the remaining half of the chicken with the other two. After eating and drinking, Doran returned to the last sanctuary city with 5 long swords, a set of leather armor, and 5 war horses. After placing his own spoils first, Doran took Ali Karstark to find Sagan. What Doran didn't expect was that Jack was also here. When Doran arrived, Jack was discussing the plan to attack Deepwood Mott with Sagan. The Thens were strong and brave, and Deepwood Mott was built deep in the wolf forest. The Thens were also good at jungle warfare, so Jack wanted Sagan to lead his men to attack Deepwood Mott. "Davin, why are you here? Who is this woman?" Sagan asked curiously when he saw Doran with Yali. "Some small things, you guys talk first, Your Majesty." Magna. Doran said hurriedly. "It's okay, tell me, what's the matter? You won't force a woman to give to Sagan?" Jack said meaningfully. Doran was frightened by Jack's words and broke into a cold sweat. Forced a woman is a heavy punishment, starting from 3 years in prison and capped by being swallowed alive by a dragon. "Your Majesty, don't scare me. This lady is the daughter of the Karstark family, who escaped from the city of Kaho." Doran said hurriedly. Jack was stunned. Kaho? Jack knew Kaho, the castle of the Karstark family. When watching the show, what Jack couldn't understand the most was Rob's double standard behavior. Jack really couldn't understand that Catelyn Tully let Jaime Lannister go for her daughter, while Rick had killed 2 children of the Lannister family in a rage. The former was only reprimanded, while the latter was reprimanded by Rob for killing children and directly convicted of treason. When he was careless, the key point was that he had broken his engagement with the Free family for a woman. You know, the Free family sent an army of 4,000 people to marry the Starks, and Rob's northern army had a total of just over 20,000 people. It's okay to let his uncle take the blame for breaking the marriage, but the key point is that he chopped off Rickard Karstark's head for 2 hostile children and his so-called justice. At that time, Jack felt that Rob's war was definitely going to fail, but what Jack didn't expect was that Rob didn't die on the battlefield, but died at the bloody wedding. "Why did you run away from Kaho?" "As far as I know, the current acting lord of Kaho is your uncle, Arwen Karstark, right?" Jack asked. When Jack mentioned Arwen Karstark, Ali's face changed. "My father and brother are dead, and my eldest brother is missing. At the same time, Arwen Karstark has surrendered to Rose Bolton and wants to marry me to his son Cregan to seize Kaho." Jack's eyes lit up, and when he looked at Ali, it was as if he was looking at a big baby. The Bolton family has not experienced a war with Stannis, so they can still use more power, such as the 5,000 people of the Karstark family. Although the Karstark family is only an Earl family, it is also a branch of the Stark family, and its strength is only 1 level weaker than that of the Bolton family. And Karstark and Bolton are the only 2 people who have retained a certain strength in the War of the 5 Kings. The Karstark family can still raise 4,000 people, and the Bolton family can also raise 6,000 people. If these 2 families were to join forces, the strength of the Bolton family would reach around 12,000 people, twice the number of troops under Jack. And now that Ali Karstark, the only legitimate heir to the city of Kaho, had appeared before him, there were many things he could do. "Sagan, I heard that Tormund has been showing off his earldom in front of you recently." Jack suddenly asked Sagan. Yes, Tormund is damned. What can he brag about? It's not the earldom awarded to him by his majesty. Jack laughed. "Now there is an earldom, do you want it?" Sagan was stunned, and suddenly looked at Ali Karstark, and then looked at Doran who sent the woman. At this moment, he seemed to suddenly understand something. Your Majesty, this earldom you are talking about, is it not the earldom of the Karstark family? Sagan asked uncertainly. Sagan and Jack were speaking the common language at this time. Ali's face turned pale instantly. Sagan looked tall and strong. Ali doubted whether she could withstand Sagan's torment, and Sagan was obviously a wild man. Seeing Ali Karstark with a pale face, Jack smiled and comforted her. Don't worry, the Thenns have laws and lords, which are similar to the nobles in the north. And Sagan looks big and strong, but he is very gentle to girls. Jack's words were true. Sagan was different from his father. His attitude towards men and women was completely different, and it had nothing to do with the appearance of women. Sagan was just gentle to women. At present, Sagan was the Magna of the Thenns. He was very popular among the female group of wild people, especially the spear wives. Most of them were obsessed with Sagan's strong body. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156, Two Groups. Ali Karstark looked at Sagan, but she had no confidence to refuse. She could only pray that Jack's words were true. Seeing that Ali Karstark did not continue to speak, Jack directly ordered, give orders to inform the northern nobles that Miss Ali Karstark and Sagan will get married in 3 days. At the same time, Miss Ali is the legal heir of Kaho City. Alvin Karstark tried to join forces with the Bolton family to usurp Kaho City. Atlantis will do its best to help Miss Ali Karstark regain Kaho City. Understood. A herald beside Jack immediately went to prepare. Jack smiled and said to Sagan, Sagan, in the name of the Atlantis seeking, I will appoint you as the Earl of Kaho City and Dawn as the Steward of Kaho City. Then will be the surname of your family, and your children will inherit the Earl's position of Kaho City. But Sagan, your people must learn the common language and then integrate into the civilians of Kaho City. Otherwise, if a large-scale riot breaks out, I will deprive you of your title and your Earl's position. Don't worry, Your Majesty, I'm Magna, and my people listen to me, Sagan said happily. During this period, they all lived in the castle of Hearth City and had adapted to the warm and comfortable castle, but now this castle belongs to Tormund. After the war, they have to live in tents or wooden houses. Now Sagan can also be assigned a castle, so he is naturally overjoyed. Moreover, he is now an earl and married a beautiful noble wife. Now it is his turn to show off to Tormund. That's settled, but you still have to attack Deepwood Motte. I'll let the queen and 2 giants go with you. Make sure to control Deepwood Motte and then find a chance to capture Asher Greyjoy alive. Don't worry, Your Majesty. With the queen and the giants, there will be absolutely no problem with Deepwood Motte, Sagan vowed. Jack nodded. There are at most 500 Ironmen in Deepwood Motte, and there are more than 8,000 people in Sagan's tribe, and there are 300 warriors of the Sagan who have joined the Children of Winter. And Jack's requirement is that with the help of Drogon and the 2 giants, 300 people will take Deepwood Motte, and after Drogon and the giants retreat, they will hold on to Deepwood Motte, and they will also capture Asher Greyjoy. Jack believes that there is no problem with the 300 people led by Sagan. The only uncertainty is whether Asher Greyjoy can be captured alive. After all, Sagan has never seen Asher Greyjoy in person, not to mention that Jack is not sure whether Asher Greyjoy will return to Deepwood Motte according to the original trajectory. Soon, the news of Alice Karstark marrying Sagan spread all over Hearth City in one afternoon. Tormund was furious when he thought that Sagan not only became an earl like himself, but also married a southern wife. It was a pity for his good brother to fail, but he envied his good brother's success. However, Tormund did not like skinny southern women. He preferred strong women who would give him a litter of strong little babies like beasts. 3 days later, the 2 giants Wan Wang and Xianbei led the way, and 300 warriors of the Thorn followed closely, and led by Daenerys to Deepwood Motte. This group of wildlings were illiterate, and so was Sagan. Although he could speak the common language, he did not recognize it. There was no way. Daenerys could only lead the way on horseback, while looking at the map, and hurrying on the road. Your Majesty, I heard that your black dragon was born with Karaku. On the way, Sagan could not help but ask Daenerys about dragons out of curiosity. Although Drogon and Carrax are both dragons, they have discovered the differences of Carrax after spending time together. It seems that Carrax is much smarter and stronger than Drogon. Yes, they finally found out that it seems that the thin dog Carrax is really strong. At least when playing, Drogon has no power to resist Carrax. Drogon and Carrax are indeed dragons born in the same year, but Carrax seems to have some kind of powerful blood, just like his master. Your Majesty? Sagan asked curiously, isn't your Majesty a descendant of Blackfy? Like you are the orthodox blood of Targaryen. Daenerys shook her head. I'm the unburnt. Do you know this? I heard it from others. Sagan nodded. I'm not afraid of fire. Jack is not afraid of the deep sea, and Jack has a close relationship with the sea god. The sea god. Sagan knew that Atlantis believed in the sea god, but Jack did not explicitly ask them to change their beliefs, and he did not know in detail. The sea god is different from the seven gods. The sea god is real. The sea god is a powerful deep sea creature. I conquered it. Daenerys hadn't finished her words yet. Suddenly, she frowned and raised her hand to stop the advance of the large army. Just now, Drogon took the initiative to enter the dragon spirit state with her. From Drogon's perspective, there were about 1,000 ambushes lying on both sides of the woods ahead. Second, are there also wild and free folk tribes living in the wolf forest? Sagan frowned. I don't know, but I heard from those northern nobles that there are wild tribes like us in the wolf forest. Dany glanced at Sagan and said, I apologize to you on behalf of the northern nobles. They didn't mean to call you wild men. Sagan shook his head. Thens don't care about being called wild men, because we are indeed backward. Thens are okay. They can smelt bronze weapons and armor, but most tribes can't even use bronze. But I still thank you for your fairness. You are much better than those nobles. You are the real noble, your majesty. Daenerys did not continue the topic, but said, there is an ambush of more than 1,000 people ahead. Can you handle it? Sagan smiled confidently. Thanks to your majesty's trust, 300 people are all wearing leather armor, holding newly forged shields and axes, and each of the 300 then warriors can fight 10 of them. Since Earl Sagan is so confident, then we will take a detour. In this forest, it is estimated that no matter how we take a detour, it will be useless. Dany knew that, since the enemy was able to ambush them in advance, there must be scouts watching them all the time. Even if Dany took a detour, she would be ambushed by the local tribesmen who were familiar with the terrain. It was better to take the initiative to fight. Anyway, most of the enemy's weapons were wooden sticks and spears, which could not even break the leather armor, not to mention that there were 2 armored giants and a dragon participating in the battle. The enemy is 10 miles ahead. You take your men to speed up, and I will support you in the air. Chapter 157, The Mountain Clans of Wolf Forest. As soon as Dany finished speaking, Drogon suddenly fell from the sky, and there was a dragon saddle on Drogon's back. Jack also added a safety belt to the dragon saddle, which made Drogon more convenient and flexible in combat. It would not easily throw Dany off if it flipped or turned sharply. Dany sat on the dragon saddle, and then Drogon swept a tree with his tail. The tree had greatly hindered her when she landed just now. So before taking off, Drogon directly broke the small tree as thick as his arm with his tail. This scene made the people of Thurn look at each other in bewilderment. It is said that this black dragon is a girl with a bad temper. Now it is true. Dany drove Drogon into the air. She was just a woman with no fighting power. A battle was about to happen, so she would naturally not stay on the ground. Jack told her the most that, if she encountered a bad situation, riding the dragon directly was better than anything else. It was the best choice. So Dany would never put herself in danger. After taking off, Dany completely entered the dragon spirit state, and then increased the distance, and hovered over a group of wildlings. At this time, from the sky, the wildlings were divided into small groups squatting in the bushes on both sides of the road, densely packed like piles of fesses. Dany didn't know why these wildlings attacked her troops, but it was probably because the chaotic north allowed these wildlings to plunder without any worries. So they naturally regarded the Winter Sons as their target of plunder. After all, they had no ability to smelt iron, and could only plunder through robbery. The new shields and new hand axes that Jack equipped for the Thens attracted the mountain wildling tribes, who wanted to make a fortune by relying on the number of people. However, the wildlings obviously underestimated the fighting power of the Thens. In Jack's words, the Thens were qualified berserkers after they became adults, and they were berserkers with certain discipline. The Thens, led by Sagan, quickly entered the encirclement of the mountain wildlings. When the tail of the Thens team also entered the encirclement, the mountain wildlings ambushed in the rear began to close quietly, completely blocking the Thens in the encirclement. Seeing this, Daenerys knew that the mountain wildlings were ready to take action, so Daenerys controlled Drogon to fold his wings and start free fall in a dive posture, falling rapidly. Khazar, the leader of the mountain clan's action, stared at the Thens in the distance with burning eyes. After the Thens approached, he saw how well equipped this group of people was. They were wearing leather armor, shields and one-handed axes, and they were all brand new equipment. This made Khazar greedy. Khazar was known as the Wolfswood Spider because he had a very strong sense of direction in the Wolfswood. The enemy was like a mosquito that fell into a spider web. It would be slowly surrounded by the spider web woven by Khazar and then eroded. Obviously, the Thens were now mosquitoes that fell into his spider web, but this mosquito was a little hard to chew, but the reward was also very considerable. Chirp. Khazar suddenly blew his bone whistle. The moment the whistle sounded in the woods, a large number of mountain clan wildlings rushed out of the bushes, roaring and rushing towards the Thens. "Meet the enemy, squad, meet the enemy," Sagan shouted loudly. Although he had been obsessed with the delicate body of Ali Kastark for the past 3 days, it did not mean that he was soft, and his ability to lead troops had not weakened at all. It even seemed that his Ren and Du meridians were opened up, and his fighting skills improved by leaps and bounds. Now even Tormund was no match for Sagan. Soon the mountain wildlings in the rear collided with the tail troops of the Thens. Screams suddenly rang out from the forest. Most of the stones thrown by the mountain wildlings' slingers were blocked by shields, and wooden spears could not even pierce leather armor unless they pierced the neck. The gap brought by equipment was obvious at a glance, especially with Jack's strong support for the Thens, and the 300 Thens were even equipped with bronze helmets. Khazar was commanding the mountain wild men in front of him at this time. "Go, hurry up, don't let them break out from the back." Just as Khazar was shouting for all the mountain wild men to surround him, a bang sounded from above. Khazar looked up reflexively, and then the expression on his face instantly changed to shock and fear. Drogon suddenly opened his wings when he was dozens of meters away from the ground, so the bang sounded. Hiss! Drogon's roar interrupted the mountain wild men's offensive rhythm. But the Thens had long been accustomed to Drogon's dragon power and roar, and took advantage of this to launch a counterattack. After clearing out the hundreds of wild men in the back, they rushed straight to the wild men in front. Drogon did not spit fire after he came down. The climate in the north is now cold and dry. With the intensity of dragon flames, it will bring devastating fires to the wolf forest, and even the Thens may not have time to retreat. And Drogon is not suitable for fighting in the mountains and forests. Then Drogon landed on the trunk of a towering tree. With Drogon's vision, Dany quickly found Khazar, who was commanding the battle again. Then Drogon jumped down, shuttled back and forth in the jungle, and soon came to Khazar's sky. At this time, Khazar had already discovered the movement above his head, but the place he was in was different from before. In order to avoid the monster above his head, he came under a big tree with dense leaves. But the dense leaves not only did not block Drogon's sight, but provided Drogon with very good cover. You must know that the dragon's sight can turn on thermal imaging, so the leaves can't block Drogon's sight at all. As long as Khazar is locked by Drogon, he can basically not run away. Khazar looked at the top of his head nervously, but after more than 10 seconds, the movement above his head suddenly disappeared. Just when Khazar's tense mind just relaxed a little, Drogon suddenly rushed down with his roar. Khazar was scared by this scene, but it was too late to escape at this time. In the end, he could only watch Drogon fall from the sky, and then was directly caught by Drogon and taken to the sky. Drogon returned to the huge tree trunk and threw Khazar into the middle of the tree trunk. Just as Khazar was wondering with horror why the monster in front of him didn't eat him, a girl's voice as clear as a yellow warbler came with unquestionable dominance. "Tell your people to surrender and then submit, otherwise all your people will be burned to ashes by dragon flames." Only then did Khazar see Dany on the dragon's back, and he was immediately surprised and said, "Dragon flame? Is this a giant dragon that has disappeared for more than 100 years? Casa certainly knew about creatures like dragons, but he had never seen one, so it was normal that he didn't recognize Drogon when he saw him for the first time. Danny didn't have the patience to answer Casa's question, but threatened again. Tell your people to lay down their weapons and surrender, otherwise I will use dragon flames to burn this forest and burn all of you to death. Chapter 158, The Mountain Clan on the Verge of Extinction. Dark clouds suddenly began to cover the north. The north, which had been dry for several months, was finally about to usher in the first rainstorm. On the main branch of the towering tree, Drogon opened his throat slightly, and the flames were brightly visible in the suddenly dark environment. Wait, let your dragon stop, let me go, and I can make the people of other tribes surrender. Casa said hurriedly. Casa was very sensible. For the mountain clans, nothing was more important than survival, especially for people like Casa who were smart. They understood the saying that those who know the times are heroes. Seeing Casa's statement, Drogon grabbed him and glided into the woods. In the blink of an eye, Casa was thrown to the ground. Fortunately, there were leaves on the ground, and Casa did not have much external injuries. With Drogon's roar exploding from the top of his head, a flash of lightning also illuminated the originally dark forest. Stop, stop. Casa shouted loudly, but at this time Casa had been disconnected from the main force, and could only run forward while shouting. Fortunately, Casa's prestige was high, and the wildling tribe and the Thenns were soon separated from the state of war. We surrender, we surrender. Casa shouted to Segan, which surprised Segan. He did not see the moment when Casa was caught by the dragon. At this moment, Drogon fell from the sky, and Segan quickly led people to surround Drogon, or to be more precise, to surround Danny. If Danny had an accident and was shot down by a hidden arrow from the other side, Jack would never forgive himself. Except for Casa, all the mountain clans looked at Drogon in shock. The terrifying beast seemed a little crowded among the trees. At this time, Casa put down his weapon and asked others to put down their weapons as well, and then slowly walked towards Drogon. We can surrender to you, but you must accept 12,000 old, young, women and children, otherwise I can only return to the tribe. They can't survive without us. At this time, Casa had recovered from the shock of seeing the dragon for the first time. If Danny didn't accept the old, young, women and children, then they would never fight for Daenerys. He didn't believe that Danny could find their tribe's gathering place in the vast wolf forest. You have 12,000 old and young? Sagan's face changed. In his opinion, the other party was simply fooling the queen and didn't understand the wildlings. The supplies in the wolf forest were richer than those outside the wall. Among Mance raiders 100,000 wildlings, 30% could fight. Now the other side had about 1,000 people, and even the spearwives were dispatched, which meant that this was the most troops they could take out. From this point of view, Casa was obviously lying. The old and young behind them were only 3,000 at most. As if seeing through Sagan's confusion, Casa Zengnen quickly explained. The mountain clans of our wolf forest used to be subservient to the Stark family, so we sent 3,000 wildlings to follow the Starks south. But almost all of them died in the first battle. And the Stark family promised to let some of us go to Winterfell every winter to spend the cold winter. But now, Winterfell is occupied by the Bolton family, and they can't help us. We asked them before, but were rejected. That's why we plundered the teams near the wolf forest, and even tried to attack Deepwood Motte, in order to prepare for the upcoming long night. But it had been occupied by the Ironborn, and we had no siege equipment, so we had to give up in the end. Finally, on the way back, our scouts discovered your team. As long as we get your equipment, we can exchange it for a lot of food, and we can also keep some access to chop trees. Hearing this, Daenerys and Sagan probably understood that the mountain clans surrendered to the Stark family, but were used as cannon fodder in the war, and died in the first battle. As a result, there are only 1,000 main laborers left. The Stark family was disbanded again. Naturally, the Bolton family would not allow the lowly wildlings to go to Winterhaven. Then the rejected mountain clans tried to attack the empty Deepwood Motte, but it was occupied by the Ironborn. Finally, they met the team led by Daenerys on the way back. This Dragon Knight, if Winterhaven does not accept us, we may not even survive the first 3 years of the Long Night. All the old people and children will be swallowed by the long night. Please, help us. Casa looked at Daenerys with some hope, thinking that this woman looked young and should have some saintly heart. If the long night came and they did not send the seeds to Winter Haven, the mountain clans would definitely not survive the long night after the long summer that lasted for a generation. Casa was lucky. Daenerys' fate was different from that in the original book. Because of Jack's insertion, Daenerys did not experience the Meereen knot, nor was she forced to marry a slave owner, so the kindness in her heart was not eroded by the hegemony of power. Is what he said true? Daenerys looked at Segan. Segan nodded. In the past, we outside the wall would end the war between tribes in advance and start to store a lot of food, but even so, only 1 in 10 people could survive. Dany frowned. The horror of the long night far exceeded her original prediction. Jack told her that after the long night, the world's population would drop sharply to 1/5 of the current level, or even less. At that time, she thought Jack was exaggerating. Dany thought that, as long as the civilians worked hard to store food and warm materials before winter came, the long night would not be so terrible, just without the sun. But Dany forgot that it was the free trade coast after Jack's reform and economic development. Most of the civilians and slaves in the world had to face the intensified exploitation of the nobles and slave owners before the long night came, and most people would only die slowly after the long night came. Dany exhaled heavily, as if she had made up her mind. You arrange for people to take your tribe and move all of them to the vicinity of Deepwood Motte. I will capture Deepwood Motte and then ask Jack to help you. At least I won't let you all die in the long night. Dany bit her lower lip. She knew that some food was nothing to Jack. When they were on Seeking Island, Newgate took her to visit the grain cultivation base behind Seeking City, where high-yield wheat was selected and cultivated every year. She didn't understand the strange knowledge that Newgate talked about, but the yield of wheat per mu they cultivated was 187 kilograms, more than twice the normal yield per mu. But Dany knew that, if she asked Jack for help, Jack would probably make some strange requests, but she wanted to help these mountain clans more. At most, she would be put in some strange and shameful postures by Jack, but if she didn't ask Jack, this group of people would die in the next long night. But you have to stay, take 700 people, and fight for me, otherwise everything is off the table. Daenerys said at last. She couldn't be tossed by Jack for these wildlings in vain. Chapter 159, Wooden Urinal on the Hill. At this time, Kazza had no other choice. His status was similar to that of Mance Rayder among the wildlings outside the wall. Everyone looked at him steadily, waiting for Kazza to make a decision. No noble was willing to open their territory to allow the barbaric mountain clans to enter their territory. So Kazza made a choice quickly. Okay, I will take 800 people and follow you to attack Deepwood Motte. I only hope you can do what you say. Okay. Dany nodded. The two sides reached a verbal agreement, but Daenerys was the active party. Dany looked up and saw that, although there was a canopy of trees to block the view, the strong wind and the increasingly dim environment all indicated that a storm was coming. Now Daenerys had to make a decision, whether to take Deepwood Motte in the heavy rain, or to temporarily set up camp and wait for the storm to pass. What's your name? Dany looked at Kazza and asked. My name is Kazza. Take all of you and rush to Deepwood Motte with Sagan at full speed. I will wait for you near Deepwood Motte. Take Drogon's roar as a signal. Then Drogon will destroy the gate of Deepwood Motte. The follow-up matters will be left to you and Sagan. Kazza didn't expect Dany to ask them to travel in the rain, but at this moment Dany had taken off again and didn't give him a chance to speak. Sagan looked at Kazza with an unhappy face. Why are you still standing there? Hurry up and gather your people. You go in front and we follow behind. Kazza snorted coldly, obviously unhappy with Sagan's commanding tone, but at this moment they were asking for help, so naturally they didn't have the confidence to talk back. Kazza quickly summoned the leaders of each tribe, briefly explained the situation to them, and then rushed to Deepwood Motte with the others. On the way, Hua, the leader of the Hua tribe, asked Kazza with some concern. Kazza, do we really have to trust them? What if they turn against us after we help them defeat the Iron Race in the city? Kazza shook his head and sighed. Hua, we have no choice. Winter in the north comes faster. By then, heavy snow will cover the entire wolf forest, and there will be nothing to eat. Moreover, we don't have much food now. We can't survive by hunting alone. Hua's face changed. Since most of their men were killed in the War of the Five Kings, their survival has become extremely difficult, and they need to hunt constantly. The nobles who were willing to exchange food with them all changed their normal behavior and held the food in their hands tightly. Even large-scale wars began to break out between tribes to grab food. It was not until Casa took the lead and formed a large alliance that things got better. Damn, I said at that time that we shouldn't arrange so many people to go south. We didn't have a good result when we went south. Huo was furious. At that time, most of the tribal leaders thought this was an opportunity to make a fortune by plundering in the south. But they didn't know that the nobles in the north didn't like them at all. They just wanted them to be cannon fodder. Seeing this, Casa could only comfort Huo and said, "Don't be angry. Who would have thought that these nobles had no compassion at all? Besides, it's better to rely on ourselves than on others. This silver-haired woman may be our opportunity." Huh? Why do you say that? Huo was a little surprised. I have traveled abroad and heard many legendary stories about this continent. The woman should be from the Targaryen family. 18 years ago, the Targaryen dynasty was overthrown. This woman will definitely take revenge. We can go south to fight with her. Go south. We only have 1,200 people who can fight. More than 100 people died in the war just now. How can we go south? When it comes to going south, Huo immediately got angry. If they hadn't gone south, their current situation would not be so dangerous. Casa had a different opinion, so he refuted and persuaded. This woman is different. She has a kind heart. I have long wanted to lead my tribe out of the wolf forest. Before I went out to travel, I always believed that only by adhering to tradition can we survive and live freely. But it is not the case at all. Being a mercenary is better than fighting wild beasts in the deep mountains and old forests. No matter what you say, I will lead the Blackwood tribe to follow this woman. I have a goal. I will definitely lead my people to live a stable life. Huo wiped the rain off his face when he saw this. We have to wait until the woman's promise is fulfilled before we can talk about this. Otherwise, everything is like God, unpredictable. Casa did not reply to Huo. Just as Huo said, everything can only be realized after the woman riding a dragon fulfills her promise. Although the tree canopy blocked most of the rain, it still made their clothes heavy. More than 1,000 people ran towards Deepwood Castle with a half. Deepwood Castle was still several miles away from them, and they would arrive soon. Deepwood Motte is the home of the Glover family, located north of the Cape of Sea Dragons, deep in the Wolfwood. It is a wooden fortress on a hill. As far as Theon Greyjoy is concerned, it is just a wooden urinal on a barren hill. At this time, above Deepwood Motte, Daenerys was looking at the wooden castle below from Drogon's perspective. Soon Daenerys found the main entrance of the castle, which was a wooden fence-style gate. Although it was pouring rain, Drogon's thermal vision could still see the figures in the castle. There were about 1,000 people. Dany estimated that there were more than 500 iron races that could fight. The number of people was a little more than expected, but it was not a big problem. Once the gate of the castle was breached, this group of iron races would lose their advantage in defending the city. Facing 1,000 mountain clans and 300 well-equipped fen berserkers, they had no chance of winning. At this time, in the sentry tower at the gate of Deepwood Motte, two iron races complained to each other with unhappy faces. "What a bunch of beasts, let us take duty on rainy days, Falk." Jack was full of resentment. The man opposite Jack was resentful, but not so strong. He just laughed and said in a mocking tone, "Jack Sparrow, you are going to be the king of pirates, and you are going to sail to the end of the world in your own ship. You were so confident at the beginning, ha 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 ha." Jack Sparrow was immediately angry and couldn't help but shouted, "Hector Barbacero, we are from the same village. Why are you mocking me like this? Weren't you the same as me? You wanted to become a famous pirate and travel the world. What qualifications do you have to laugh at me, bastard?" Ha ha ha, just a joke, but our wish is impossible to realize. When we were young and ignorant, we actually wanted to sail on a 40-meter ship. Now think about it, those knights who are as greedy as devils can't make us save even a silver coin. Just when Jack Sparrow was about to insult the knights of his village, a flash of lightning took care of the night sky. In Jack Sparrow's sight, a huge black shadow passed through the night sky. What is that? Jack Sparrow rubbed his eyes. Chapter 160. Fright on a rainy night. What? Hector Barbacero turned his head and saw only darkness and heavy rain. What are you talking about? Are you dazzled? Jack Sparrow was also puzzled. Could it be that he was really dazzled? The walls of Deepwood Castle were built with century-old wood. Because century-old wood was not scarce in Wolf Forest, the walls were built very wide. If there was no fire attack, it would be even stronger than ordinary stone walls. Even the watchtowers were built directly on the walls. Just when Jack Sparrow thought he was dazzled, he suddenly saw a huge black shadow on the wall not far away. Boom. Accompanied by thunder, lightning illuminated the night sky again. This time Jack Sparrow finally saw the face of the black shadow clearly, but after seeing it clearly, he only felt his scalp tingling, and fear was like a poisonous snake entangled in his heart. The hideous head in the dark night was like a demon from the seven hells. Rain dripped on its exposed teeth. Jack Sparrow could even see its pupils full of violence. Jack Sparrow pointed at the back of Hector Barbacero, his fingers trembling constantly. Fear eroded Jack's brain, and for a while he was unable to make a sound. Hector frowned. He knew Jack, and Jack's expression was definitely not pretended to scare him. Cold sweat also broke out on Hector's forehead. At this time, Jack's expression clearly told him that there was something behind him. His breathing began to become heavy, and his hand slowly moved to his weapon, and then he turned back suddenly. Thunder exploded from the sky again, but at this time there was nothing on the wide road of the city wall in the distance. Huh. Hector exhaled. Jack, your acting is getting better and better. Hector hadn't finished speaking, and the moment he turned around, he saw the black dragon tail swaying behind Jack. With his hair standing on end, Hector drew out his sword instantly and looked up at his head. Bang! The awning above his head was blown away instantly. Hissing, Drogon's roar exploded in the ears of the two men. Then Drogon suddenly swung out his tail and blew the two men off the 10-meter high wall. After dealing with the two sentinels, Drogon roared for several seconds. In Drogon's sight, he could already see the mountain clan and the children of winter not far from the city gate. Then the dragon flame lit up in the dark night sky. Although the wooden city gate was damp, it was still ignited by Drogon's dragon flame. A moment later, Drogon slammed his body into the city gate, and the wooden city gate instantly broke into pieces. After Drogon's dragon flame appeared, Caesar and Sagan in the distance immediately roared and rushed to Deepwood Motte with their respective men. However, when Caesar and Sagan rushed into the castle gate, they found that there were only two guards on duty, and both of them had their ribs broken by Drogon, and were now lying on the ground groaning in pain. Capture them, and everyone else, charge into Deepwood Motte. Sagan ordered quickly. Most of the Iron races gathered in Deepwood Motte for a banquet. Although it was completely dark, it was only evening. Dark and rainy days are suitable for holding banquets. When Asher Greyjoy becomes the king of the Iron Islands, they will be Asher's confidants, and their status will naturally rise. Myrmidon Raid is the supreme commander of this group of people. Before Asher Greyjoy left, she appointed him as the commander of Deepwood Motte. At this time, he was standing in front of the window of Deepwood Motte, holding a glass of red wine in his hand elegantly. This was one of the few stocks in Deepwood Motte, and he had it all to himself. At this time, Myrmidon Raid was in high spirits. After being appointed as the commander, he was completely blinded by everything that power brought. At this moment, he thought of himself as a noble and elegant dignitary, and those vulgar Ironmen behind him were completely different from people in two different worlds. Even the captain was the same in his eyes. It was precisely because of this that he did not blend into the banquet, but stood alone by the window, deeply trapped in his self-righteous elegance and unable to extricate himself. As lightning tore through the sky, Myrmidon Raid suddenly frowned. He didn't know if it was his illusion. He seemed to have seen a large number of figures in the distance. Someone attacked Deepwood Castle and broke through the castle gate? But he immediately ruled out this idea. It was already evening, and with the storm and the dark environment, how could anyone break through the gate of Deepwood Castle? Besides, he specially arranged two sentinels to be on duty on the sentry tower. The tall wooden walls would never be broken unless someone could fall from the sky and quietly solve the two sentinels. He took a sip of red wine gently At this moment, he felt that he was so elegant and noble. Lightning tore the sky apart again, and the goblet in Mehmet and Raid's hand fell instantly and fell to the ground. With the help of the light of lightning, Mehmet and Raid was horrified to find that a large number of savages had come to the bottom of the castle, and there were even 2 giants. The hair on his body stood up, and Mehmet and Raid's head was about to explode. Without any signs or warnings, the other party came to the bottom of the castle with the rain curtain. Don't eat, hurry up. The savages have broken through the city wall. Go get weapons and gather your crew. Damn, hurry up, a bunch of trash. Mehmet and Raid's horrified roar resounded through the hall, and everyone was stunned for a while. Then someone reacted, and immediately went to get the weapons in the side room, but it was too late. With a loud bang, the wooden door of the castle hall was knocked open by a giant. Wang Wang gasped heavily, and white mist came out of his mouth and nose. This scene made the captains in the hall feel dead, as if they had seen a man-eating beast. They were all middle and high-level Ironmen who occupied Deepwood Motte. If they were wiped out here, the other Ironmen in Deepwood Motte would have no power to resist. Because the armor and interior decoration were very heavy, after being soaked by the heavy rain, even Wang Wang and Senbei could hardly carry them. So after breaking open the door, the 2 giants did not continue to attack the Ironmen inside, but sat down on the ground to recover their strength. Then the rest of the wildlings rushed in, and without any hesitation, they began to slaughter the scattered Ironmen. Faced with the aggressive and sudden appearance of the wildlings, the Ironmen made almost no effective resistance. Countless wooden spears pierced the bodies of the captains who were holding a banquet, but the Ironmen who lived in tents and thatched houses escaped this wave of massacre. Chapter 161, Deepwood Motte changes ownership. The next morning, the sun tore through the dark clouds that had lasted all night. In the open space in front of Deepwood Motte, 440 Ironmen knelt on the ground. A total of 129 Ironmen were killed last night, and the rest all chose to surrender. Your Highness, how should these Ironmen be dealt with? I suggest that they be killed in a pit to save food. Sagan said directly. Killing all these captives is the most worry-free way, otherwise they will have to provide food for these captives, which is a pure waste of food. No need to kill. Keep these Ironmen alive, and when Asha Greyjoy comes back, we can use these Ironmen to win her over. Daenerys rejected Sagan's proposal. The forest clans, trunk clans, branch clans and tree clans near Deepwood Motte are loyal to the Glover family, and they are also fiefdoms of the Glover family. These 4 clans have established villages near Deepwood Motte. Although they are still clans, they have gradually moved away from the hunting life. After Deepwood Motte was captured, the 4 major clans also tried to rescue it, but most of the men followed Robb to the south to fight. This indirectly led to the fact that they not only failed to recapture Deepwood Motte, but were robbed by the Iron Race of Deepwood Motte, and many women were abducted. At this time, Lady Glover and her daughter Aina, who were under house arrest, were also released by Daenerys, but at this time, only Lady Glover and her daughter Aina Glover were left in the Glover family. In response, Daenerys directly appointed Aina Glover as the Earl of Deepwood Motte. Lady Glover was very grateful. Since her man left, the steward of Deepwood Motte became the real owner of the castle, and they were imprisoned in the castle. Later, Asha Greyjoy captured Deepwood Motte with 1,000 people. Although Asha treated them well, they were still prisoners after all. For this reason, Lady Glover told Asha Greyjoy that the North would definitely exchange Sea Dragon Cape and the Stone Coast for Deepwood Motte. Asha readily agreed, and was ready to use this as an achievement to gain the support of everyone at the King's selection meeting. After 2 rounds of captivity, Lady Glover finally regained her freedom at this moment, and swore allegiance to Daenerys without hesitation. Daenerys then asked Khazza to arrange people to take care of the Ironborn, and arrange these captives to repair the castle and clean up. At the same time, she asked Khazza to move all their tribes to the vicinity of Deepwood Motte and build a town with Deepwood Motte as the center. After arranging these, Daenerys wrote another letter to Jack in Hearth City, informing Jack that Deepwood Motte had been captured. The Raven quickly delivered the letter to Jack. Finally, Hearth City. After Jack finished reading the letter in his hand, he immediately called Tormund. Tormund, you go and gather 100 archers and 100 infantrymen, and then recruit some farmers to transport 30 days of food and grass to Deepwood Motte, and bring a blacksmith and a tailor. Understood. Tormund went to arrange the manpower. After receiving the order, Jack rode on Karaku and went to Deepwood Mott in person. Deepwood Mott was a good place with a lot of wood. Jack planned to use Deepwood Mott as a supply point and build a shipyard near the sea. With the wood from the wolf forest, shipbuilding would be more convenient. Deepwood Mott was not far from the last half, but the road was difficult to walk. However, Karaku did not need to walk at all and flew to Deepwood Mott soon. At this time, Deepwood Mott was full of busy figures, not only the captured Ironborn, but also the people of Deepwood Mott and the people of Kazza and Sagan. They cut down the nearby trees and collected them to light them. They were all soaked by fighting in the rain last night. During the battle, they did not feel very cold because of the constant consumption of physical strength and adrenaline secretion. But now that the battle is over, they feel the cold after calming down. Karaku, who fell from the sky, made everyone look sideways. They did not expect that there was a dragon bigger than Drogon. And Karaku's scarlet scales and slender body made them feel evil and weird, and they did not have the domineering aura of Drogon at all. Arriving at the hall of Deepwood Moor, Lady Glover was holding her daughter. Daenerys, Kazza, and Sagan had all changed their clothes and were sitting in the hall. When Jack came in, Daenerys immediately went forward to greet him and gently kissed Jack on the lips. Everyone, this is Jack Poseidon, my husband, the Sea King of Atlantis, and the legal owner of the Iron Throne. Daenerys took the initiative to introduce Jack. Jack gently waved his hand to stop Lady Glover, who wanted to stand up and salute. Madam, you don't have to stand up and salute since you are holding your child. Thank you, your heart is amazing. Lady Glover said. Are you Kazza? Jack looked at Kazza, who was sitting on the right side of Sagan at this time. Lord Sea King, I'm Kazza. You are younger than I thought. Kazza said. Before Jack came, Daenerys briefly talked about the current situation in the north, and they also knew that the north would soon become a province directly under the Atlantis Empire. Although the north has not been completely pacified yet, Kazza thinks this is a done deal. After all, Drogon's strength was fully demonstrated last night. Since everyone is here, I'll make it short. Kazza, you take 500 people and follow Sagan back to Hearth City, and the rest of you stay to look after the Ironborn. In addition, I have arranged 200 fully armed Winter Sons to come and assist Lady Glover in controlling Deepwood Mott and protecting her own safety. At the same time, a month's rations have also been sent. Kazza, you need to migrate your tribe to the vicinity of Deepwood Mott as soon as possible. After everyone has migrated here, you will start to cut down trees in the wolf forest in the northwest direction. The cut trees will be used to build houses, and the unused trees will be stored to deal with the long night in a few years. Sagan, leave all the one-handed axes under your command, and I will make new ones for you when you go back. Kazza and others tribes are basically out of ammunition and food, and they live a tight life every day. Jack naturally can't support them for nothing. At that time, they only need to provide a full meal a day and let them cut down trees towards the northwest coastline. After cutting out a passage, Jack arranged for people to build a road and then a shipyard. Atlantis also built a shipyard in Meereen some time ago. However, the wood in Meereen is only slightly more than that in Neptune Island, and the wood suitable for shipbuilding is still not enough. The limitation of raw materials greatly reduced the shipbuilding efficiency of Atlantis, so Atlantis had to import wood from other places. But the cost of imported wood is too high, and even if there is a large trade surplus, it cannot be wasted like this. So Jack wanted to build Atlantis overseas shipyard in a place where wood is abundant. Chapter 162, Planning the World's 5 War Zones. In the past, most countries divided war zones according to their own territories. However, the division of war zones by the Eagle Source provided Jack with inspiration. Based on the particularity of Atlantis, in the future, it will definitely rely on decentralization to allow local governments to govern the vast and unconnected territory. Therefore, Jack plans to build a large and developed tax officer training system. In the future, relying on a large number of tax officers and rapidly developing shipping forces, taxes will be directly collected from various places, and then the taxes will be divided into two, leaving 40% for local development. The remaining 60% will be directly handed over to the central government, and then the central government will use these taxes to develop military and civilian technologies, and then distribute the developed technologies to various places to achieve a cycle. This will not only strengthen the comprehensive strength of the central government, but also widen the gap with various places in military strength, ensuring the central government's dominant position. At present, this system is preparing to be tried on the free trade coast. After taking over the Bay of Kalin and controlling the throat of the North, Jack will return to the free trade coast and personally preside over this reform. According to this idea, Jack divided the battle zone of Atlantis into 5 major battle zones, namely the East, West, South, North, and Central. The North-South war zone divides Westeros into 2. The North is the Northern war zone, and the area south of the North is divided into the Southern war zone. The East-West war zone is bounded by the Valyrian Peninsula. The East is the Eastern war zone, and the West is the Western war zone. The Seychelles Islands itself is the Central war zone. In this way, the 3 primitive forests of Wolf Forest, Royal Forest and Rain Forest have a very important status in the early development of Atlantis. In the next 3 weeks, Casa took 15 tribal leaders and moved all their tribesmen to the vicinity of Deepwood Castle and began to build wooden houses near Deepwood Castle. I believe that it will not take long to form a small town with Deepwood Castle as the center. By then, the cultural barriers between the tribes will become less and less until they merge and become the unique culture of Deepwood Castle. At the same time, Jack arranged for the people of Deepwood Castle to teach these primitive tribes how to cultivate land and raise livestock. After everything was on track, Daenerys took Jack to the highest point of Deepwood Motte and played for more than an hour, and then Jack returned to the last hearth. At the same time, Segan and Casa led 300 and 500 people respectively. At this time, Casa and Segan walked side by side. Casa was obviously a chatterbox, while Segan was the type of person who spoke less. "Friend, why did you choose to follow His Majesty the Sea King? Where will we go to fight?" Segan glanced at Casa, and he might have been impatient with Casa's questions, so he said, "I plan to go to the Hearth City to get some sausages later." "You misunderstood me, friend. What do you mean by your ultimate goal? To follow His Majesty the Sea King to fight? What is your purpose?" "To go to the last Hearth City to get some sausages." Segan really didn't want to pay attention to Casa, so he casually perfunctorily said to Casa. But Casa obviously didn't hear Segan's perfunctory. He said that he was doing it for the lives of his people. If he could be canonized as the Lord of the South, he could take his people away from the bitter and cold northern border. Daenerys, who stayed in Deepwood Motte, had just recovered some strength. She held the splits for an hour. Although Jack helped her maintain the splits in the end, she was still exhausted after the end. After her body was almost recovered, Daenerys arranged 4 people to replace the flag at the city gate with the golden sea monster flag of Greyjoy's family. At this time, the 440 Ironmen in the city could only eat 2 half-full meals a day, and they had to do a lot of labor. At the same time, their weapons were confiscated. With the 200 Winter Suns sent by Jack, Daenerys was not worried about these people rebelling. But Daenerys still divided the group into 5 parts and managed them separately according to Jack's method. After they repaired the walls of Deepwood Motte, Daenerys imprisoned them all in their newly built cells and then chopped wood day and night. The next time was to wait for Asha Greyjoy to come back. Daenerys was very curious about Asha Greyjoy because this woman would most likely become Jack's mistress. Dany knew that Jack was a rather lustful person, as can be seen from the rule that Jack stipulated that the Sea King could have one main wife and multiple concubines. But Jack was also very picky in choosing women. Although Jack said that he wanted his bloodline to control the Iron Islands, if Asha Greyjoy was not good enough, Dany was sure that Jack would rather take the trouble to plow the Iron Islands than choose to have a bastard with this woman she had never seen. Daenerys knew that Jack intended to let his descendants control the continent of Westeros. Jack had told Dany before that after retaking Westeros, Elizabeth would be canonized as the prince of the king's territory in Dragonstone. Although Daenerys was dissatisfied with this, her eldest son and eldest daughter had been named the crown prince and the prince's eldest princess. Therefore, Dany did not discuss polygamy with Jack in depth. After all, Aegon Targaryen was also polygamous. He was already the queen, and it would be useless to bother about the polygamy of the Sea King, except to be annoying. However, although Dani was dissatisfied, she had to admire Jack's mind. From the centralized system of the Seeking Island to the current polygamy system, to change the blood surnames of various places to Poseidon, it can be said that every step exceeded Daenerys' expectations. In this way, hundreds or even thousands of years later, no matter how the dynasties of Westeros change, Poseidon's surname will eventually sit on the Iron Throne. However, all this must be supported by strength. As far as Dany knows, there have been kings who have made similar attempts before, but they were sent to the guillotine by their subjects before they even completed the first step of centralization. So Dany knew very well that Jack Poseidon could establish a centralized Atlantis. In addition to the particularity of Karakshu and Atlantis itself being composed of slaves, there is another most important point. That is the large number of strange ideas in Jack's head, and Jack's surname of Poseidon. Poseidon is not only Jack's surname, but also the name of the sea god in the myth of the sea god's creation of the sky. The most important thing is that this sea god is real, the kind of sea god who can come to your doorstep at any time to beat you up. Because of this, Daenerys decisively gave her 2 children and Meereen and Yunkai as dowry to become Jack's queen. Between ruling Westeros and being the mother of the world, Daenerys chose the latter without hesitation. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163. The situation in the north is becoming clearer. 302 AC. After Jack returned Deepwood Mod to the Glover family, Jack successfully won the loyalty of some northern nobles. Jack also took Lady Glover to the last hearth and chose a new husband for her. This was agreed by Lady Glover because it was Lady Glover who took the initiative to bring it up. She knew that she, a woman with a daughter under 1 year old, was like fat meat in the eyes of others, and could not defend Deepwood Motte at all. Not every woman could have extraordinary political talents like Lyanna Mormont. Most women were still bound by tradition, and hoped to find a man they could rely on. This was a shackle that the times had placed on women. So she took the initiative to ask Jack to help her choose a husband. In this way, having a man she could rely on would also make her feel a little safe. For this reason, Jack directly gathered all the single men in Hearthmont. When they learned that a countess was going to choose a husband, they were all excited. This was a good thing, to get a castle for free. The only flaw was that Aina Glover had been canonized as the Countess of Deepwood Motte. But even so, there are still many people eager to try, especially some knights and barons. But what no one expected was that Lady Glover actually chose Cassa to be her man, which made Jack suddenly realize that the Countess did not seem to be a naive lady. Cassa naturally accepted this with pleasure. No one would refuse such a good thing, not to mention Cassa, a wild leader who was eager to become a noble. As long as he became Lady Glover's husband, Cassa could exercise the power of the Earl and make all the tribal leaders who had surrendered to him noble. The two held a simple wedding directly in Hearth City. Cassa changed his name to Cassa Glover. He had no surname himself, so he directly took Glover as his surname. In the following period of time, the situation in the north became clearer, and most of the nobles in the southeastern part of the north chose to surrender to Rose Bolton. The nobles in the northwest chose Jack Poseidon, and the two sides began to confront each other and acted frequently. In terms of military strength, Rose Bolton still has the advantage. At this time, Rose Bolton already has 13,000 men under his command. It can be said that a considerable number of nobles have chosen Rose Bolton. Jack only has 8,000 men at this time, of which 5,500 are the Sons of Winter composed of wildlings, followed by 1,000 Dragon Knights led by Hecarim. Because Hecarim thought that Korachal was very powerful and beautiful, Hecarim dyed his armor red and changed the name to the Scarlet Dragon Knights. The second is a noble army of 1,500 people. Most of the 1,500 noble army are small nobles below the Earl, and barons and knights account for the vast majority. They all feel that it is difficult to survive the upcoming long night, so they want to fight with Jack. The Earls are very rare. Only the Earl of Bear Island, the Earl of Deepwood Castle, and the Earl of Caho City are willing to be loyal to Jack Poseidon. Among the three L's, Bear Island sent 30 people, and Deepwood Castle made Jack pay for 200 people and several carts of food. Although Caho was taken at the same time as Deepwood Mott, Arwen Carstark, the uncle of Ellie Carstark, took away all the food and soldiers. So Caho, like Deepwood Mott, not only did not provide help to Jack, but also made Jack pay for 300 people and 10 carts of food. However, these 300 people were the 300 Thens that Sagan had summoned from the newly added land. In addition to these 300 Thens, there were thousands of old and young women and children from the Thens who were migrating to Caho. Obviously, Sagan was ready to migrate all the Then tribes to Caho. For this purpose, Sagan also recruited some literate people in Caho and built a small school to teach the Thens the common language. In this way, not only can the male labor force lost in Caho be compensated, but the population ratio of Caho will not be completely unbalanced. And I don't know if Sagan deliberately angered Tormund or what. After arriving in Caho and becoming the Earl of Caho, he directly reduced the land rent tax in the territory to 40%. They also abolished the messy window tax, well water tax, firewood tax, etc., and only retained the business tax, head tax and land rent tax. For this reason, Sagan specially asked his butler Davin to write a letter to mock Tormund, saying that Tormund was called Kind Tormund by the residents of Hearth City, which was really a false reputation. This made Tormund so angry that he couldn't sleep all night. The next day, Tormund announced that the land rent tax in Hearth City would be reduced to 40%. At the same time, he abolished the right of first night and messy taxes of the nobles in the territory, and only retained the business tax, head tax and land rent tax. The farmers in the two people's territory were happy, but their vassals, viscounts and barons were not happy, and they expressed their dissatisfaction to the two. But this time was different from the past. After their subjects learned of the news, they thanked Tormund and Sagan. Moreover, Tormund and Sagan's people were migrating. They did not go through the War of the Five Kings, and the Battle of Castle Black ended hastily because of Jack's appearance. Therefore, the combat troops in the hands of the two were enough to clear out these barons and viscounts, and then replace them with obedient people. So even if the vassals protested, it was useless. The two even killed several vassals who led the trouble. For them, there was no twists and turns. If they didn't obey, they would just kill them. No one could stop the two from competing with each other in vanity. They were not hereditary nobles, so they naturally wouldn't think about how to deprive the peasants. On the contrary, because they lived outside the wall for many years, they understood the importance of unity more, and were proud to let their people live a better life. In the eyes of Tormund and Sagan, after becoming an earl, the peasants in these territories became their own people, and naturally they could not be oppressed and exploited. Especially Sagan, the Thun people in his hands, had laws and lord consciousness, and everyone was like a berserker, so they directly killed all the vassals who came to Caho City to make trouble, leaving no one behind. Then Sagan moved all the peasants who could be relocated to the vicinity of Caho City, and those who could not be relocated were sent to manage the territory by the literate people in the castle. Due to Sagan's policy of light taxation and enriching the people, many farmers are willing to migrate to live near Caho City and are willing to be directly managed by Caho City. In this regard, Jack saw something in Sagan that other nobles did not have, that is, a flexible mind. Especially with the various policies adopted by Sagan, Jack even suspected that this guy would complete the centralization of power in his territory. As for Tormund, he did not think as much as Sagan did, but was just imitating Sagan. This fool simply did not want to be compared with Sagan and ridiculed, and in the end he only killed the two viscounts who led the trouble. Chapter 164 Borisaf, just have some fun. The political competition between Tormund and Sagan not only caused dissatisfaction among the nobles in their own territory, but also caused dissatisfaction among other nobles who came to Jack for help. Several nobles even found Jack and reported the absurd practices of Tormund and Sagan. Before Jack could say anything, these people were scolded by Lyanna Mormont. Lyanna Mormont managed Bear Island. The tax on Bear Island was very low. Even half a year ago, the tax rate was only 10%, and there was only land rent tax, and no other messy taxes. Bear Island was too poor. During that time, the residents of Bear Island could hardly catch fish. Lyanna Mormont even had to open warehouses to support them, let alone pay taxes. So Lyanna herself also believed that reducing taxes was a manifestation of the integrity and kindness of a lord. After all, if he couldn't even take care of his own people, what qualifications did he have to call himself a lord? Of the 5 viscounts who came to complain, one showed deep shame, and another was very angry. He left with his 80 soldiers, and the remaining 3 showed angry expressions. At that time, Lyanna was not afraid of the 3 people at all. She was as brave as a man. She not only glared back, but also scolded the 3 people. Although Lyanna did not take this matter to heart, Jack remembered it. The viscount who left angrily was surrounded and killed by a group of bandits on the way, and the other 3 nobles were closely monitored. Being scolded and ridiculed by Lyanna, he not only did not leave, but continued to stay in Hearth City. Isn't it obvious that there is something fishy? Hearth City, Jack's study. Okay, you like to play conspiracy, right? Are you Liu who are Qiang Po Sealan's opponent? Since you want to play, then let's play it well. It's just right to kill the chicken to scare the monkey, so that everyone knows that the punishment of swallowing the dragon alive is not a scare. Jack looked at the letter in his hand and sneered. Just now, Walker handed him a letter, which was intercepted by the raven sent by Viscount Cassinoa. Viscount Cassinoa was one of the viscounts who showed resentment at the beginning. Jack then arranged for people to closely monitor him, and bribed his lieutenant, Sir Goodwin Holt. The letter contained Cassinoa's oath of allegiance to Rose Bolton, and then there was Cassinoa's plan. He decided to join forces with the other 2 viscounts, to find an opportunity, to assassinate Jack and Lyanna Mormont, who was the first to surrender to Jack, as a gift for surrendering to Rose Bolton. He also promised in the letter that he would bring the head of one of Jack and Lyanna to surrender. He only asked Rose Bolton to appoint the 3 of them as the Earls of Deepwood Mott, Hearth City and Carter City. However, the letter was handed over to Jack by Goodwin Holt. Because Jack promised that, as long as he discovered the whole situation of Cassinoa's treason, he would reward Goodwin Holt with all the territory, castles, and women of Cassinoa. Goodwin Holt was not interested in Cassinoa's castle and territory. He had already had a relationship with Cassinoa's wife, and he had an inextricable obsession with Cassinoa's wife. Even Cassinoa's 2 daughters now were the product of his affair with Cassinoa's wife. At the beginning, Cassinoa's wife specifically calculated the time, and gave birth to a pair of twin daughters for Goodwin Holt. Later, what made Goodwin Holt uncomfortable was that Cassinoa did not die in the war to the south. Goodwin Holt was ready to give up, but he didn't expect Jack's guards to suddenly find him and coerce and induce him to be an undercover. In the end, Goodwin Holt suppressed his inner excitement and pretended to be sad to accept Jack's coercion and inducement. Little did he know that in Goodwin Holt's view, this was not coercion and inducement at all, but a combination of inducement plus inducement that he could not refuse. Then Jack asked Borisov to call Lyanna Mormont. After Borisov nodded, the man with poor sense of direction got lost in Hearth City for a while, before he found Lyanna's residence. Count Lyanna, His Majesty is calling you. Borisov knocked on the door and shouted. A moment later, Lyanna opened the door, looked up at Borisov, and asked with sleepy eyes, is His Majesty going to call a meeting? When will it go? Lyanna was obviously woken up from her sleep. Her voice was soft and sticky, and Lyanna at this time was more like a 12-year-old little girl, not an earl. No, His Majesty called you alone. I don't know what the specific matter is, but I heard His Majesty say something like having fun. It's just right. Lyanna's sleepiness disappeared immediately, and she looked up at the tall and strong Borisov in front of her with some disbelief, but she gave people a sense of stupidity. At this time, Lyanna's mind turned quickly. She felt that it should not be what she thought, but the stupid guy in front of her didn't look like he would lie. Thinking back to this period of time, Jack often talked to her, and she was immediately more convinced of her thoughts. Jack's appearance and personality are there. Lyanna doesn't hate Jack, and can even be said to like him very much. In this era, no woman will refuse a young king who combines appearance, personality, age, wealth and power. But she is only 12 years old now, and she hasn't even had her first period. How can she do that kind of thing? But Lyanna still followed Borisov to Jack's study. Your Majesty, Earl Lyanna is here. I'll go out first. Walker said, and then took Borisov out of Jack's study. "Little Lyanna, I haven't seen you for a day. Do you miss me?" Jack greeted first. Let Lyanna and himself be bait, although there is no danger, but Jack still feels a little embarrassed to speak. Then Jack said hesitantly, "I have something to discuss with you. If you don't want to, I won't force you. I can just do it directly." Lyanna's heart shook, and she thought to herself that it was indeed the case. Then, in order to avoid embarrassment for the two after Jack told her his purpose, she answered first, "Your Majesty, I'm too young and my menarche has not come yet. Can I wait for 2 years? I can use other methods. I also learned some when my mother taught my sister. But in exchange, can you give the Mormon family a piece of arable land? It doesn't need to be a good farmland, as long as it is ordinary land that can be cultivated. This is my request." Lyanna's face flushed when she said these words. She knew what she meant by saying these words. Lyanna knew that the law of Atlantis allowed the seeking to marry multiple concubines. If Jack asked her to be his wife, Lyanna would not refuse, but as a condition, Jack had to take out a piece of land suitable for cultivation and able to feed everyone on Bear Island in exchange. Chapter 165, The Honorable Lord Lyanna Mormont. Although Lyanna also has a good impression of Jack, she is more concerned about the people of Bear Island. She must be responsible for every citizen of Bear Island. Bear Island has experienced the War of the Five Kings and the invasion of the Iron People. There are only 62 people on Bear Island who can fight. And in order to ensure that the Iron People will not take the opportunity to plunder, Lyanna only brought 30 people this time. So it is basically impossible to obtain land to support more than 10,000 people by making meritorious deeds. In addition, Jack's frequent visits made Mr. Pug feel that he had found an opportunity to take Lyanna a step further. He felt that Jack liked Lyanna very much, but it might also be that Jack was a BT who liked little girls. But Mr. Pug Jack was not like a BT. No matter from which aspect, Jack was a qualified and excellent ruler. Therefore, Pug often hinted to Lyanna that if Lyanna could become Jack's woman, she would definitely be able to fight for the position of the Marquis of the Dreadfort, and the people of Bear Island would be able to better cope with the upcoming long night. Although Mr. Pug has always told Lyanna not to feel pressured, his words and deeds were all telling Lyanna that this long night would be extremely long. All the people of Bear Island are looking forward to Lyanna being rewarded with a piece of fertile land so that they can store more food before the long night comes. So Lyanna is under great pressure now. In addition, Borisov's words are indeed easy to be misunderstood, and Lyanna has the idea of becoming Jack's concubine at this moment. But Lyanna always feels that this is like an X transaction, which causes her words to change from the Marquis of the Dreadfort to a piece of land that can be cultivated and feed everyone on Bear Island. Indeed, you are a little too young, and it is not appropriate to let you be bait. After all, you haven't even had your first period. Wait, what I said seems to be different from you. I didn't even tell you what I wanted to discuss with you. How could you have such an idea? Jack was a little surprised. He really didn't react at first, but then he realized that there might be some information errors between the two parties. "Didn't you ask me to play and said that the age is just right or something?" Lyanna's voice became smaller and smaller, and then suddenly realized something. A huge sense of shame instantly enveloped Lyanna. Tears burst out uncontrollably, and she sat in her seat at a loss. Lyanna has a strong personality and is mature and wise beyond her peers. She also has a sense of the overall situation and honor. However, due to various coincidences, Lyanna fell into such a shameful situation. Her childish personality of loving face was exposed all of a sudden, and she couldn't stop crying. Jack probably understood what happened at this time. It must be that the fool Borisov didn't listen to everything and conveyed some wrong information to Lyanna. In addition, Jack really liked Lyanna's personality and often went to Lyanna to chat, which led to some misunderstandings in Lyanna. However, Jack guessed that there must be a reason for the Meester next to Lyanna. The Meester Pug followed Lyanna to Hearth City. Every time he went to talk to Lyanna, Pug would praise Jack in front of Lyanna and then say how happy it was to be Jack's wife. As the saying goes, don't hit a smiling person. Because Pug kept praising Jack, Jack didn't say much, but now it seems that the other party is very likely to hint that Lyanna is his side wife and planned something. Judging from Lyanna's words, Pug might want to marry Lyanna at a moment, so that Mormont can obtain a rich fiefdom and move away from Bear Island. But this is not the point of the problem. The point is the little Lyanna whose eyes are red because of shame. However, Jack did not expect that the little bear girl who was not afraid and shed tears when facing the giant whites in the original play would actually cry because of such a thing. But to be honest, it is hard for Jack to imagine how much courage Lyanna muster to say these words with her character. If Jack puts himself in Lyanna's position, Jack feels that he can directly buckle a Sea King's palace on the cement floor of Sea King Island. Jack rubbed his eyebrows, thought for a moment, and took the initiative to speak. Maybe Borisov said something that made you misunderstand, but I really like you. Your personality and talent are very attractive to me, so I solemnly beg you, can you marry me and become my second wife? Jack didn't have any good way at this time. If he directly explained and rejected Lyanna's words, it would most likely make Lyanna return to Bear Island with her people. So Jack simply explained the situation and asked Lyanna to marry him directly. Jack's original plan was to take Sansa Stark back from Littlefinger, then let Sansa Stark become his concubine, so that Poseidon would replace Stark as the Guardian of the North. But Lyanna Mormont is also okay. Jack originally planned to support the Mormont family to become the next Bolton family. As long as Jack spends some time and gives Lyanna more support, I believe Lyanna's ability is enough to make up for the inconvenience caused by her identity. What's more, the 3 earls in the north of the north have been replaced by wildlings who support Jack, and these people can become Lyanna's supporters. After hearing Jack's words, Lyanna finally stopped crying. After Jack gently hugged Lyanna into his arms and comforted her, Lyanna recovered a little. After nearly half an hour, Lyanna finally calmed down and broke free from Jack's arms. Then, as if she had made up her mind, she suddenly said firmly, "Your Majesty, you don't have to be responsible for my impulsiveness and recklessness just now. I will lead the warriors of Bear Island to fight the enemy, and you can directly reward them according to their military merits." Seeing this, Jack laughed and said softly, "I have always believed that the men of Bear Island can fight 10 men with 1, but you only have 30 people. The battlefield changes rapidly. Do you think you can get a piece of land that is enough for everyone on Bear Island to survive? What's more, I'm the king of the sea. There is no reason to take back what I have said. I will marry you, if I say so. Tomorrow I will issue an edict to canonize you as my first concubine, and that's it." Lyanna pursed her lips and asked uncertainly, "Then do you still want it?" Lyanna put her hand on her collar. Jack immediately waved his hand and said, "Although I like lolly and young women, I don't have a copper fetish. Let's talk about it when you have your first period. What we need to discuss now is whether the North is enough for everyone on Bear Island to survive." Lyanna was stunned. "What do you mean?" She was referring to Jack's last sentence. "Isn't what I mean obvious enough? Robb Stark and Jon Snow died on the battlefield. Bran Stark and Rickon Stark were burned to death by Theon Greyjoy. Sansa Stark married Tyrion Lannister. Arya Stark is missing, and her life or death is unknown. The Stark family is dead in name only, my dear little wife, the respected Lord Lyanna Mormont." Lyanna looked at Jack's conceited and unquestionable eyes, and didn't know what to say for a moment, and was a little at a loss. Chapter 166 Benefits and Betrayal. After Lyanna came out of Jack's study, she looked absent-minded. Borisov looked at Lyanna in surprise, thinking, "So soon?" Feeling Borisov's eyes, Lyanna glared at Borisov angrily, then turned and left. Borisov frowned, looking at Lyanna's back. He didn't know how he had offended her. The next day, Jack summoned all his vassals, including Casino and others, to the scene. After everyone arrived, Jack clapped his hands and signaled everyone to be quiet. "Everyone, we have now occupied half of the north, but I have bad news for you. Everyone, the bloodline of the Stark family has lost contact. Sansa Stark married Tyrion Lannister and disappeared at the Purple Wedding. There is still no news until now, so I decided to recanonize a Duke of the North." The noise suddenly sounded. In fact, they all knew the situation of the Stark family. It was well known that Joffrey was poisoned to death at his wedding. Sansa Stark, who disappeared at the same time, became the most likely murderer. Even if Sansa Stark was not the murderer, she would be identified as the murderer, or more accurately, as an accomplice, because Cersei believed that the murderer was Tyrion. But Jack had prepared a large number of letters and leaflets, and when the time was right, he would tell the story of Petty Baelish and Olenna's poisoning. Due to the limited number of ravens, Jack could only arrange some people to sneak into King's Landing with leaflets, and then spread the information with a large number of people, not giving Lannister any chance to suppress the matter. Your Majesty, who do you want to appoint as the new Warden of the North? A hint of viciousness flashed in Kusunoa's eyes. The other nobles were also looking forward to it. The Stark family was now as if they were exterminated, and the new Warden of the North meant a new distribution of power. According to my discussion with the three L's, it is decided to appoint the Mormont family as the new Warden of the North. What do you think? Jack narrowed his eyes and looked at everyone with a smile on his face, as if he could just speak up if he had any objections. Many nobles looked at each other, and for a moment they didn't know what to say. Now, the northern nobles who defected to Jack are generally barons, and the new Duke of the North must be born among the three L's, but they didn't expect it to be the Mormont family of Bear Island. But thinking about it carefully, it makes sense. After all, the Mormont family of Bear Island was the first northern family to support Jack. Jack wanted to conquer Westeros as a Sea King, which was essentially no different from Aegon's War of Conquest. They followed Jack to try their luck, not wanting to be the first batch of nobles to be eliminated in the long night ahead. I support your Majesty's decision. Tormund was the first to express his opinion, followed by Segan and Cassa, who decided to support the Mormont family. Some barons also expressed their willingness to support the Mormont family to become the new Duke family of the North. The number of soldiers in their hands did not exceed 50 at most. So since they chose to serve Jack, they naturally followed Jack's pace. But some people didn't think so. Kusunoa stood up and said, Your Majesty, although we all swore allegiance to you, you promised that the Stark family would still be the guardian family of the North. Now you suddenly change it. Isn't this asking us to betray our own lord? Jack looked at Kusunoa with a smile, and he knew that this guy would never be content. I do want the Stark family to continue to be the guardian of the North. After all, the Stark family has been guarding the North for 8,000 years. However, the Stark family does not have an heir now. Do we have to move the statue of Eddard Stark from the cellar of Winterfell? After Jack finished speaking, many nobles showed their approval. If the Stark family still had an heir, they would definitely support the Stark family. But now the Stark family does not have a clear living heir. We can't really move the statue of Eddard Stark from Winterfell, right? Your Majesty, of the 5 children of the Stark family, only Robb, Bran and Rickon are dead, but Sansa and Arya are just missing. I don't think we should jump to conclusions so hastily. Kusunoa just didn't want Lyanna Mormont to become the Duke of the North. The ridicule of the little girl at the time was still vivid in his mind, and Kusunoa would never forget it. What you said is not without reason, but Viscount Kusunoa, a group of dragons cannot be without a leader for a day. You have all witnessed the ability of Earl Lyanna Mormont, who is more than qualified to become the Duke of the North. And Sansa Stark has become the wife of Tyrion Lannister. Tywin's eldest son is a member of the King's Guard. Even if Sansa is still alive, she is still a widow of the Lannister family. If Arya Stark is still alive, I will give her the fiefdom of the Dreadfort as compensation. There is no other way, unless we have accurate information about the heir of the Stark family. In addition, Viscount Kusunoa, I have something to ask you. Jack took out a letter while speaking. Originally, Kusunoa saw that Jack was determined to support Lyanna Mormont to become the Duke of the North, and was still thinking in his heart that, since he could not stop it, he would offer Lyanna's head to Roose Bolton, so that his contribution would be greater. But when Kusunoa saw Jack took out a letter and said that he had something to ask him, a bad premonition came into his heart. Duke Lyanna, thank you for reading this letter to everyone. Lyanna, as the protagonist of today, has not spoken. To be honest, she is still a little confused. She just wanted a piece of land, but she was promoted to the position of Duke of the North. Dear Duke Roose Bolton, Guardian of the North, Lord of the ancient and noble House of Bolton, please allow me. As Lyanna read, everyone looked at Kusunoa and the other 2 viscounts angrily. They were all small nobles, with dozens of people. To put it bluntly, they wanted to follow Jack and the wildlings to check their benefits and accumulate some capital for the winter. You, on the other hand, sold us directly, made a lot of money for yourself, and then prepared to spend the long night comfortably. Son of a bitch, you are really a smart man. You sold all of us directly and enjoyed the glory and wealth yourself, right? A hot-tempered noble cursed directly. They just wanted to get some capital for the winter. If they didn't want to be loyal to Jack, they could just take people to Rose Bolton. But now you are purely betraying others, sacrificing everyone's interests to satisfy your own selfish desires. How can you not make them angry? Chapter 167. Where is loyalty and honor in the face of interests? You three, if you are dissatisfied, you can just leave together and go to your most valuable Lord Bolton. But assassinating and selling our information is wrong, isn't it? Come on, take them down. Kill 9 people. Cough cough cough. Take them down first. Jack almost said it off the cuff. If he really wanted to kill 9 families, then considering the marriage relationship between the nobles in the north, he might as well kill everyone. Originally, Jack was going to use the excuse of going out for a honeymoon with Lyanna to ambush 300 swordsmen and chop several people into meat paste. But Lyanna rejected Jack's proposal and said that, even if Jack was very strong, he could not take risks. So Jack changed his mind and chose to gather everyone to deal with Cassinoa and the other 2 on the spot. As Cassinoa and the other 3 were controlled, several viscounts wiped the cold sweat from their foreheads unconsciously. Fortunately, they rejected Cassinoa's solicitation. Now the main military force in Jack's hands is the wildlings and 2 dragons. To be honest, these small nobles are not very important. Jack had long been prepared for his nobles to betray him because he knew very well that there was no loyalty and honor in the face of interests. In particular, the reform of the tax system in the future would inevitably cause dissatisfaction among some nobles, and it would have to be resolved by force. Just like Jack's charming ancestor of the Ying family in his previous life, he used force to sweep across the 6 countries, and then unified the writing and weights and measures. When November came, the Unsullied who came to support from the free trade coast would arrive, and then it would be the time for Jack to completely clean up and settle the north. So after Jack took Deepwood Motte and Carter City, he sent 3,000 Sons of Winter to confront Rose Bolton near the End River. Rose Bolton, the old man, was probably also contacting foreign aid everywhere, and Jack even heard that the Vale intended to fight northward. In addition, although the Bay of Kalin is still under the control of the Ironborn, Earl Wyman Manderley of White Harbor has surrendered to Rose Bolton and is willing to use the White Harbor fleet to transport the Free Army to the north. But in the original book, Earl Wyman Manderley never forgot the kindness of the Stark family. After they fled the Reach, only the North accepted them. But now Jack and Bolton do not support the Stark family to become the Duke of the North, so Jack is not sure what Wyman Manderley is thinking now. At this time, Cassinoa and the other 2 have been pressed to the square outside the castle. Cassinoa kept cursing Jack and Lyanna, but Karaku, who was resting, has come to Jack. With Karaku's roar, Cassinoa, who was originally full of shit, seemed to be grabbed by the neck, and his voice stopped abruptly. Cassinoa, Patrice, Jensen, in the name of the Sea King, I deprive you of your Viscount title, and sentence you to treason, and be swallowed alive by the dragon. Then Karaku roared and quickly came to the 3 people. Jack, you will not die well. The Lord of the Iron Throne will tear you into pieces sooner or later. You and your dragon will go to the 7 levels of hell, and never be reborn. Cassinoa looked at Karaku, who was close at hand, with horror. The scarlet scales and sharp giant teeth were clearly visible, and a wave of heat rushed towards him. However, although Cassinoa's whole body was soft, his mouth was still hard. Snow would fall in the north during the long summer, especially in places like Hearth City, which were close to the Great Wall, where the temperature was very low. At this time, Karaku was steaming all over, and his body looked much larger, but even so, Cassinoa was still insulting Jack. But the next second he couldn't curse, because Karaku had already held half of his body in his mouth. Then the fierce dragon flame spread out from the gap in Karaku's mouth, and Cassinoa screamed, and then there was no movement. Karaku swallowed Cassinoa, and the other 2 people were incontinent because of the fear. Jack frowned. Karaku was his eldest son. How could he swallow such a mixture of feces and urine? Karakshu also looked at Jack and obviously had the same idea as Jack. He couldn't swallow the feces and urine. Dragon flame. Jack gave the order. Then Karakshu sprayed liquid dragon flames, which instantly melted the two people. This scene made the others' brows jump, especially the unique dragon flame, which seemed to be much more powerful than ordinary dragon flames. And many nobles also realized that Jack was not as gentle as he looked. Before, they all thought that Jack was a gentle, elegant, humorous person and would not act high and mighty in front of everyone. But now they know that when Jack faces betrayal, he will also take cruel means to execute the betrayer, instead of simply beheading him. But at this time, Jack's image in their hearts began to get closer to the king. Instead of giving people the feeling of facing a polite dragon knight boy as before. After executing the three people, Jack called out the names of several people. The people whose names were called out suddenly felt their reins tighten, not understanding what they had done. But then Jack's words made them ecstatic, because they had just taken the lead in expressing their support for Lyanna, so they were canonized as viscounts by Jack, and the territories of the three people in Casinoa were awarded to them. Among them was Goodwin Holt. Jack fulfilled his promise and gave him the castle and title of Casinoa. With these, Casinoa's wife naturally could not escape. After canonizing several people, Jack also announced that he would marry Lyanna Mormont as his concubine, and this time no one raised any objections. At the same time, Jack promised that, as long as they followed him well, after defeating Rose Bolton, he would distribute the territory of the Bolton family to everyone. After drawing a big pie, Jack dismissed everyone, and at the same time kept Lyanna, Hecarim, Tormund, Cassa, and Sagan. These people are the real strength that Jack can rely on. Although Jack has won over a group of small nobles today, as long as Jack fails in the next war, most of them will choose to run away without hesitation. Your Majesty, aren't we going to launch a decisive battle? Rose Bolton has more and more troops. As long as he feels that he has accumulated enough strength, he will definitely launch a sudden attack. Cassa's intuition is very sharp. After understanding the situation of both sides, he quickly realized that Jack needed to launch a decisive battle quickly. Otherwise, Rose Bolton, with the support of the Iron Throne and other nobles, will definitely be able to slowly grind Jack to death. The best way is to rely on the dragon's air combat ability, gather all the forces in hand, and go straight to the Bolton family's Dreadfort to fight a quick battle. Don't worry, Cassa. Although Rose Bolton has the support of the Lannisters, I'm not without foundation. In November, 5,000 unsullied and 3 ships of gold will arrive at Eastwatch by the sea. Rose Bolton wants to delay time, and so do I. Before that, what we have to do is to safely settle the 100,000 wildlings and the newly added land, and ensure that nothing goes wrong in our rear. Then, with Deepwood Motte, Hearthgate, and Kaha as our support, we can hold the Hearthgate line of defense. The 3,000 Sons of Winter can also put pressure on Rose Bolton at all times. Chapter 168 Free Trade Coast Political Reform. 3 ships of gold? How much is that? Can you give me some? Tormund's eyes lit up. Haha, as long as you perform well on the battlefield, I will make the decision. In addition to the rewards you deserve, I will give you an extra box of gold. The gold and the Unsullied were transported from Meereen. At this time in Meereen, Mando Gru was watching the golden dragons in the warehouse, being moved away one by one. Just a few months ago, Atlantis decided to build a huge military base on the west side of Meereen, so 11 million golden dragons were transferred from Meereen. This was the last wave of golden dragon transportation. At this time, the Free Coast military base has been basically completed. Sorge came to Mando and said with a smile, "Thank you Prime Minister Mando for your cooperation. No, since it is the order of His Majesty the Sea King, we must actively cooperate, otherwise the Sea God will punish us." Mando's face was full of smiles, but he felt bad in his heart. Now no one in the Free Trade Coast believes in the Sons of the Harpy, and they all believe in the Sea God instead. Because Poseidon can really show his spirit. When the Temple of Poseidon was established in Meereen, Yunque, and Astapa, there were no believers. Until one day, a devout believer of Poseidon begged Poseidon to restore the sight of his blind child. Then the statue of Poseidon suddenly leaked some milky white light spots and fell on the believer's child, and the child miraculously restored his sight. Later, under the propaganda of those who cared, Poseidon quickly replaced the son of the harpy and became the new belief of the free trade coast. You must know that, although Jack has always emphasized that Poseidon is the god of the sea, in the hearts of the public, although Poseidon has the power of gods, he is essentially a deep sea monster. But Poseidon is different, after he has the power of faith. At first, he showed miracles through the power of faith condensed by tens of thousands of people, and then crazily attracted millions of believers. After having more power of faith, he showed more miracles, and finally achieved a virtuous circle, and completely became the omnipotent god of the sea in the hearts of the people. The most important thing is that Poseidon doesn't know who to follow, and his mind is terrible. As he became more and more familiar with the power of faith, Poseidon could even know others' evaluation of him through the 5 senses of his believers. If someone spoke rudely and was caught by Poseidon, he would use the power of faith to control the believers around him, and then pass a trace of his power to the believers through the line of faith to teach the rude person a lesson. But unfortunately, Poseidon could not pass his power to Jack through the line of faith, because there was no faith relationship between the two. Moreover, Poseidon, who had millions of believers at this time, learned some secrets of this world from the Faith Galaxy, which was regarded as revealing a corner of the veil of the world. The original magic power level of this world was above average, and it could accommodate 2 true gods with godhood. But later, a struggle broke out between the 2 gods, because of the struggle for faith, which eventually led to the regression of the world's magic power level. Only the King of Light was left as a true god with godhood, and he was still seriously injured. For this reason, the King of Light guided the children of the forest to create the Night King, and then directed a reincarnation of the King of Light to eliminate the Night King, and severely harvested the power of faith of the creatures in the world. It's just that the Lord of Light suddenly disappeared, and his God of Light was also missing. The other false gods without godhood also disappeared, leaving only extraordinary creatures such as the Night King and the Green Prophet, who are considered demigods. The long night and long summer in the world are caused by the original war of gods, but this is not a big deal. As long as there is a true god with godhood, even if it is a true god who has just condensed the godhood, the world can restore the normal 4 seasons. As for why the Lord of Light did not restore the 4 seasons of the world, it is probably because he was seriously injured, and he wanted to harvest the power of faith of the people of Westeros, so he did not repair the sequelae left by his battle with another true god. 2 weeks after Swords transferred the last 1,000,000 gold dragons, the free trade coast ushered in changes again. Atlantis stipulated that from now on, the tax revenue of the 3 cities will be divided into 2. 60% will be handed over to the treasury of the empire, and 40% will be used for development and the salary of officials at all levels. And the tax collection will be the responsibility of the tax officer named by Atlantis. At the same time, Mando Gru was appointed as the Lord of Meereen, Rennet as the Lord of Yunque, and Rhodes as the Lord of Astapa. Among the 3 lords, except Mando, the other 2 were airdropped from Atlantis. The lord is responsible for managing the affairs of the city, but does not have the power to appoint and dismiss personnel and make major decisions. The power to appoint and dismiss personnel and make major decisions is the responsibility of the Bishop of Poseidon sent by Atlantis. The bishops of Poseidon are divided into 5 levels: gray, white, green, red, and blue. The cardinal is responsible for the appointment and dismissal of personnel and decision making at the city level. The bishop must not only have a firm belief, but also a knowledgeable brain. Therefore, if you want to obtain the status of a bishop, you need to pass an exam, and the written exam is the most basic. The most difficult thing is to pass the interview at the Temple of Poseidon. Only when the statue of Poseidon appears white light can you pass the interview, otherwise your faith is not firm enough. Now the central officials of the court in the Palace of the Sea King also need to pass this assessment. At least they must have the identity of a Grey Cardinal, otherwise they cannot serve as important officials. In layman's terms, after graduating from the University of Atlantis, those with outstanding grades can take the written test and interview of the Temple of Poseidon, while those with average grades can go to society and become highly educated talents. Then the three major legions of black dragons, white dragons, and green dragons, as well as the Unsullied led by Grey Worm, a total of 33,000 people, were all incorporated into the establishment of the Free Coast military base. Among them, 18,000 people from the three dragon legions formed the Black Dragon Fleet, the White Dragon Fleet, and the Green Dragon Fleet, respectively, and the shipyard built by Atlantis provided warships and logistics maintenance. Because the Unsullied cannot be copied, they have become an independent legion establishment. When these Unsullied grow old or die in battle, the independent Unsullied establishment will be forever recorded in history books. This reform further weakened the power of the nobles. Originally, these nobles did not have to pay taxes, but as the Free Trade Coast gradually became an outpost of Atlantis, more and more nobles joined the maritime trade. Therefore, Jack added the requirement for nobles to pay taxes in this reform, but Jack's overall tax rate was not high, with a land rent tax of 10% and a business tax of 20%, so they could still accept it. However, there was basically no land rent tax in the three cities of Myrene. Except for cash crops such as olive trees, almost all food was transported from the Lazarplain, which led to the rapid development of the Lazarplain relying on grain planting. The food from the Lazarplain is not only the main source of food for the three cities of Myrene, Yunque, and Astapa, but also the main source of food for the Free Coast military base in the future. Therefore, after Sorge discussed with Kado and Grey Worm, he decided to increase the number of Unsullied stationed in the Lazarplain to 7,000. The remaining 3,000 Unsullied were stationed in Kaiserberg, which has now become a complete military fortress, and many Lazar people and civilians who migrated there gathered near Kaiser Pass. They built a small town of Kaiser near Kaiser Pass to provide a place for passing merchants to rest. For this reason, Mancho appointed his son Ivan as the mayor of Kaiser Town, and brought 200,000 gold dragons to expand the dock of Kaiser Town. Now the nobles of the Free Trade Coast basically divide their families into three parts. One part goes to business, one part joins the bureaucracy, and the last part joins the military. Since then, the Free Trade Coast has completely fallen into the control of Atlantis. At the same time, the bishops who have major decisions began to use the remaining 40% of taxes to vigorously build civil facilities and expand roads between cities. The three cities, which had originally slowed down their development, began to develop rapidly again, and several primary schools, middle schools, and universities sprang up. However, primary and secondary schools currently only teach reading, literacy and arithmetic, and middle schools have added martial arts to strengthen the body. It was not until universities that blacksmithing and other technologies were added. However, blacksmithing in schools is not called blacksmithing, but advanced forging technology. In addition, there are also carving technology colleges, medical research colleges, and so on. In the Imperial College and Imperial Research Institute built on the Sun Island just east of the Seeking Island, a large number of craftsmen and bachelors are studying the mathematics, physics, chemistry, and biology knowledge left by Jack. As for geography, to be honest, Jack's geography may not be as good as that of the local scholars in the world. When they have studied it, they will integrate it into books and then send it to middle schools for others to learn. Previously, he was worried that early enlightenment would cause unrest in the empire, so even though Atlantis was extremely rich, Jack did not vigorously develop the education system. But since Jack learned that Poseidon could enter the River of Faith, he put the development of the education system on the agenda. Now that the foundation of the education system has been laid, what remains is the slow development of academics. Chapter 169. Stop the Millennium King Selection Meeting. Westeros, the Iron Islands. The Iron Islands are a region of the Seven Kingdoms, located in the Iron Bay in the West Sea of Westeros. Before the conquest, it was an independent sovereign country, ruled successively by the King of the Iron Islands and the King of the Rivers and Hills. The Iron Islands are the home of a cruel seafaring people who call themselves the Ironborn. Some say that the Iron Islands are named after the rich iron, or on the islands. But the Ironborn say that the islands are named after the tough and unyielding nature of their islanders. The islanders often say that the captain of each ship is a king, so the Iron Islands are also called the Land of All Kings. During the War of the Nine Copper Plates, the Iron Islands stood on the side of the Iron Throne. Lord Cron Greyjoy was a peace-loving man. He outlawed slavery and worked hard to integrate the Iron Islands with the other 7 kingdoms. But his son, Balon Greyjoy, overturned his father's policies and dreamed of returning to the old ways and paying iron money again. After building a huge iron fleet, Balon openly challenged the Iron Throne in 289 Egan and sought independence. But then it was suppressed by Robert Baratheon I, the only surviving son of Balon. Theon Greyjoy was sent to Winterfell as a hostage of Eddard Stark. Due to the lack of Greenland in the Iron Islands, the Ironmen can only get some cheap iron, or after working all day, and the lack of blacksmiths on the island has caused the price of iron ore to fall further. They live in the harsh natural environment of the islands and disdain the weak way of survival on the Greenland. But in fact the Ironmen will try to occupy the inland territory if they have the opportunity. In the heyday of the Ironmen, the Riverlands were included in their rule. Before the arrival of the Andals, the Iron Islands chose their king through a Kingsmoot. The Kingsmoot is a traditional ceremony held by the residents of the Iron Islands. At the Kingsmoot, the captains of the Iron Islands longships vote to elect the new Iron King. Traditionally, the Kingsmoot is held at the River Naga on the island of Old Wyke. The founder of the Kingsmoot was a great priest of the drowned god, Garin the White Stick. He formulated a series of rules for the Iron Islands, including that the Ironmen could not go to war with the Ironmen, and consolidated the Iron Islands from scattered sand into a whole. He summoned all the captains and the Rock Kings and Salt Kings from all over the world, calling on everyone to elect a supreme king to rule the entire Iron Islands. But human greed is uncontrollable. After hundreds of kings were elected, the eldest son inheritance system lasted for nearly 1,000 years. Until the arrival of the Andals, the Hall family became the ruling family of the Iron Islands, and the Greyjoy family was a prominent noble family in the Iron Islands at that time. However, in the subsequent Egan Conquest War, the Hall family was destroyed, and Egan allowed the Ironmen to elect the rulers of the Iron Islands themselves, so the Greyjoy family officially entered the stage of history. King Dickon was cautious and pragmatic, and did not offend the Targaryen family who owned dragons. After the death of King Dickon, his politically skilled successor, King Goran Greyjoy, successively suppressed several conspiracies or rebellions that attempted to overthrow the Greyjoy family and completely expelled the Seven Gods' faith from the islands, consolidating the family's ruling position. Since then, the King Selection meeting of the Iron Islands has completely disappeared from historical occasions. It should have been developed in this way, but accidents always come more suddenly. Euron Greyjoy, who was expelled by Balon Greyjoy many years ago, came back and asked for a king selection meeting. Balon ordered the expulsion of Euron, and as long as he was alive, Euron was not allowed to return to the Iron Islands. As a result, one day after Balon fell to his death, Euron immediately returned to the Iron Islands. This made everyone on the Iron Islands suspect that it was Euron who hired someone to assassinate Balon Greyjoy. However, no one accused Euron, because there was no evidence, and Euron's fleet was not vegetarian. A full 5,000 pirate sailors who were good at fighting were more powerful than the current Iron Fleet, so no noble dared to take the initiative to touch Euron's tiger whiskers. So no nobles mentioned this matter, and Theon Greyjoy's life and death are unknown. Although Asha Greyjoy is quite prestigious, she is also a woman. Of course, the most important thing is that Euron Greyjoy convened the Kingsmoot to avoid war between the Ironmen. Not only Euron Greyjoy has the opportunity to compete for the King of the Iron Islands, but other nobles also have this opportunity. So most people ignored Asha Greyjoy in silence. So the Kingsmoot, which had not been held for 1,000 years, was held again at the Naga's Rib on Old Wyke. Naga Hill, also known as the Naga's Rib, is located on Old Wyke in the Iron Islands. Here is the Grey King's Hall. The Ironmen have held the Kingsmoot here since ancient times to decide their monarch. The entire area is a mountain covered with weeds. Standing on the mountain, you can overlook the Naga Cradle Bay. The 44 ribs of the Naga emerged from the ground like a huge white tree trunk, as thick as the mast of a large sailing ship, and twice as high as the mast. At the beginning of the Kingsmoot, any captain can name himself and become a candidate. As the saying goes, every captain is the king of his own ship, and then appoint 3 assistants. He can also give an impassioned speech and present gifts to show his generosity, to gain the support of the Ironborn. Once most people shout out the name of a candidate at the same time and are willing to support him as king, the king's moot ends. Asher Greyjoy waited for Euron Greyjoy on the hill with 3 designated assistants. Euron Greyjoy's delay caused dissatisfaction among many people. This obvious act of showing off will only make people feel disgusted. Asher was a little nervous at this time. For her uncle Euron, Asher had heard many absurd rumors about him. Euron was crazy and cunning, unpredictable, and often enjoyed destroying other people's souls. It is said that Asher's uncle, Aeron Greyjoy, was once violated by Euron Greyjoy when he was young. In the end, after Euron seduced the concubine of his third brother Victarion, he was exiled by Balon. While everyone was waiting, Euron came slowly, followed by his assistant carrying a box. After everyone arrived, Aeron Greyjoy, as a priest, officially announced the convening of the King's Moot. Under Aeron's presidency, all the captains were looking forward to the gifts brought by the 6 candidates. After all, this is a general election to attract people. An impassioned speech will certainly make people excited, but everyone will prepare the manuscript of the speech in advance, and everyone's speech will be inspiring. At this time, gifts are particularly important. The more and more expensive your gifts are, the more you can win people's hearts. If you can't even take out good gifts, who will believe that you can lead everyone to prosperity and wealth? The King's Moot system has continued since then, and famous Iron Kings such as Eurus Greyron, Silas the Flatnose, Haraj Hall and Old Sea Monster have been elected. It is said that there are as many as 111 kings who wear the driftwood crown because of the King's Moot. When an applicant walks up the hill, whether he becomes king or not will be decided by the King's Moot, and only once in history has the King's Moot been declared illegal. This was the time of the late coming Thorgan, the son of the Iron King. After the Iron King died, his brothers held a King's Moot, while Thorgan was out raiding, hoping to choose him in the absence of the King's son. But the King's Moot ultimately chose Urathan Gubbler. The first thing the new king did was to kill all the relatives of the old king who were present. 2 years later, Thorgan returned to the Iron Islands and claimed that the King's Moot was illegal because the old king's son had not been a candidate in his right. In addition, Urgen's bloodthirsty and brutal character made too many enemies, which led to the condemnation of the priests and the Ironborn. Thorgan was eventually supported as the new Iron King. However, this was not the only time in his life that Thorgan threatened the King's Moot system. In Thorgan's later years, he kept his son Urgen by his side at all times, making him his de facto heir and successor. When he died, Urgen naturally took over the throne and became Urgen Greyron IV. No one dared to stand up to protect the King's Moot system like Whitestick Garen did. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170 Euron's Promise. Gilbert Farwin, as the first applicant, walked up the hill with his 3 sons and assistants. He promised that, if he became king, he would lead the Ironborn to build 10,000 longships like Nymeria and go to the Land of Hope on the other side of the Sunset Sea. The gifts he brought were sealskins, walrus tusks, whalebone armlets and bronze warhorns. After distributing the gifts to everyone, the response was mediocre, and Gilbert Farwin was not disappointed at all. He just wanted to make a name for himself and never thought that he could really become the king of the Iron Islands. Then Anvil Breaker Ailey sat in a carved driftwood sedan chair and was carried up the hill by his 3 grandsons. His gifts were countless silver, copper and iron coins, as well as armlets, collars, daggers and throwing axes. Puchy, ha 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 ha, sorry, I couldn't help it, but if Lord Ailey can't stand up, then I will be loyal to Lord Ailey. Asher Greyjoy's words made everyone laugh. Eri Amok, also known as Eri the Just and Eri the Anvil Breaker, is a fearless raider among the Ironborn and the elderly lord of the Amok family. Eri weighs about 20 stones and is now 89 years old. His hair is snow white and his thick beard is long and snow white. He is carried on a chair. His weapon of choice is a huge and terrifying hammer. But now that Eri is nearly 90 years old, let alone swinging a huge and terrifying hammer, he may not be able to lift it, even if he is given a small wooden hammer. Eri looked at the ridicule of the crowd and was angry. He wanted to struggle to sit up from the chair, but he was already 89 years old and there was no sign of standing up, no matter how hard he tried. Lord Eri, I advise you not to try. 89 years old is considered a long life. Maybe you can live to be 100 years old. Asher's words once again caused a lot of ridicule from the crowd, and finally Eri sat down with a red face. Dunstan Drum went up the mountain next, with his assistants Adric the Stern and his two sons Donald and Dennis. Drum's incitement was persuasive, but his eloquent speech gradually lost its appeal to everyone. And the gift Drum brought was too stingy, even inferior to Gilbert Farwin's gift. Bronze could never buy a crown. Victorian Greyjoy then walked up the steps with his assistants Newt the Barber, Raff the Cripple and Raff the Red. He was very popular, and the waterfall of silver, gold and gems he brought won Victorian more supporters. This scene made Asher itchy. Originally all this gold and silver belonged to her. She would use this gold and silver to win the support of the captains, but it was all taken by this uncle. At that time, she was occupying Deepwood Motte with 1,000 men. When she got the news, and returned with 400 men, Balon Greyjoy's third brother Victorian had already emptied the warehouse of Peck Castle, leaving nothing for Asher. Knowing that she could not wait any longer, Asher Greyjoy came to the crowd, and his assistants were Girl Cole, Tristan Portley and Horace Harlow. Asher Greyjoy took out a pebble from her arms, and opened the box behind her, which was full of pebbles. Euron Greyjoy smiled evilly at the sight, and this smile happened to fall into Asher Greyjoy's eyes, making her a little angry. If Jack was present, he would find that Euron was not like the clown who jumped repeatedly in the American TV series. At this moment, Euron exuded an elegant madness, and his one eye flashed with a confident and crazy light, which put Asher Greyjoy under great pressure. My dear niece, as an uncle, I have to ask, because this concerns the reputation of our Greyjoy family. Are you really going to use pebbles as gifts to entertain the captains? If you don't have money, I can lend you some, but isn't it a bit perfunctory to use pebbles? This stuff is everywhere in the Iron Islands. Euron Greyjoy's words made everyone nod, and it was obvious that they were very dissatisfied with Asher Greyjoy's gift. However, Asher Greyjoy did not panic, but said calmly, everyone, this is a symbol of the treasure that the Iron Race exchanged for their lives in the battle with the North, the pebbles of the rocky coast. Asher asked her assistant to open several other boxes. Here are the pine cones of Deepwood Motte and the turnips of Winterfell. Deepwood Motte is in my hands, and the North is willing to exchange it for Dragon's Horn and the Stone Shore. As long as I become the king of the Iron Islands, I promise to give you rich land. You don't have to rely on the hard life of digging iron ore. You will have green land to cultivate, and you can live by the sea and fish anytime and anywhere. Whether you choose to go back to the ancient road to pay iron money, or choose to live a stable life, to farm and do business, you will get my blessing. Land, peace, and victory are my promises to you. Asher's words attracted the support of some people, and some people chose to support him because of Asher Greyjoy's identity. At this time, Victorian supporters immediately mocked. A woman who couldn't even take out a box of gold and silver, who knew whether the pebbles, pine cones and turnips were real? This immediately ignited the King's election meeting, and the supporters of both sides began to push and insult each other, as if the fans of the two idols were arguing over who was more popular and more handsome. The two sides pushed and shoved, and cursed at each other. Just when they were about to fight, a dull horn sounded. Everyone suddenly became quiet. The heavy horn sound had an indescribable deterrent power, rushing straight into the depths of everyone's soul. When everyone looked over, they found that it was Clegane, the assistant of Euron Greyjoy, who blew the horn, but everyone did not notice that there was something wrong with Clegane. After blowing the horn, their attention was all on Euron Greyjoy, who stood in the center at some point. You disappoint me. I can't believe what you have experienced over the years that has made you so weak. Look at these gifts. Look at what they promised you. A coast, peace, or a victory as small as a pebble? Euron Greyjoy looked at the previous competitors with disdain, and then said loudly, I have traveled to every place in the world, including the mysterious and dangerous Valyrian ruins, where I obtained a dragon egg, a set of Valyrian full armor, and this, the dragon horn. Any dragon that hears a horn will obey me, and I happen to know where the only 4 dragons in the world are. I will blow the horn. control the 4 dragons, and give the whole Westeros to you. The Iron race will become the noblest race in Westeros, and the continent will crawl at our feet." Then Euron Greyjoy asked his assistants to open the other boxes. A large amount of golden gems blinded everyone's eyes, and even silver could not be seen in them. Old way is the term used by the Ironborn to refer to their looting tradition. The substitution of plundering property through war for purchase is what they call paying iron money. Chapter 171 Asher escapes from Pike City. Seeing this scene, Victarion and Asher's faces changed drastically, and they lost their previous composure. Regardless of whether the dragon's horn is really as magical as Euron said, these golden gems will not deceive people. The two originally thought that Euron maintained a fleet of 300 warships and should not have extra money on him, but now it seems that Euron's wealth is far deeper than they imagined. Euron's speech and gifts satisfied everyone, and most people began to turn to Euron. Then Euron Greyjoy began to count the votes. As expected, Euron's votes crushed others, and he successfully became the winner of this King's Moot. Euron looked at Asher and Victarion proudly, especially Asher, who knew that her current situation was not very good. Although Euron became the winner of the King's Moot, the King's Moot had not been held for thousands of years. To be honest, the authority of the King's Moot was greatly reduced compared to before, especially during the period when the Hall family and the Greyjoy family ruled. All people were heirs. And with Euron's character, he would never allow Asher to threaten his dominance of the Iron Islands. The King's Moot had ended, and soon everyone left Old White with rich gifts. Asher Greyjoy, who returned to Pike, felt that her situation was too dangerous, and finally summoned her confidants, and decided to return to Deepwood Motte. Sure enough, just as Asher was about to leave, a message came that Euron married her to Aery, the 89-year-old man who was ridiculed by Asher for not being able to stand up without Asher's consent. Soon Asher left Pike Island quickly with 50 longships. At this time, Asher was a little confused and didn't know what to do next. "We can only go back to Deepwood Motte first," Asher Greyjoy sighed. A few days later, Asher landed at Dragon's Point. She was ready to go to Deepwood Motte with 600 people who were willing to follow her, and then thought about what to do next. "Lord Asher, are we going to Deepwood Motte?" a captain who chose to follow Asher asked curiously. "Yes, Euron is a good man. He married me to Aery, which cut off my inheritance rights and prevented me from marrying other nobles to take his place. I will go see Rollos Bolton. He is now the Duke of the North. It is time to win people's hearts. If he is willing to give me Deepwood Motte, I will support his rule on behalf of the Ironborn, and then go to the Iron Throne to take back the position of Duke of the Iron Islands at the cost of surrender." Asher's current plan is to unite the Bolton family and the Iron Throne, because she has no good solution for the time being. If the Iron Throne and Rollos Bolton are unwilling to help her, she will take the fleet to Slaver's Bay to find the Mother of Dragons. With this in mind, Asher led 600 people to Deepwood Motte. However, along the way, the surrounding mountain clans made Asher feel something was wrong. First of all, the number of people. The closer to Deepwood Motte, the more people there were. There were obviously not so many people before she left. However, when she saw the golden sea monster flag hanging on the wooden wall of Deepwood Motte, she didn't think much about it. At this time, Jack and Hector were on duty again. The two of them had experienced a frightening rainy night and were almost scared to death. Fortunately, Drogon's tail hit the wooden pillar first and then fell on the two of them. In addition, the ground was covered with fallen leaves and muddy water, so the two of them didn't even have broken ribs. It was just that they were afraid that the dragon would chase them again, so they simply started to pretend to be dead until Cass's people found them again. Seeing Asher coming, the two of them changed their faces and didn't know what to say for a while, until the third captain on guard looked at the two people with wrong faces. Seeing this, the two of them immediately made a choice, and their faces immediately returned to normal. At the same time, they apologized in their hearts. "Sorry, Miss Asher." After Asher landed at Sea Dragon Cape, she was discovered by the wildlings nearby, and then reported to Daenerys in Deepwood Motte first. When Daenerys heard that hundreds of people were rushing to Deepwood Motte, she immediately determined the identity of this group of people. Hundreds of people came from Sea Dragon Cape and went straight to Deepwood Motte. It was undoubtedly Asher Greyjoy. Daenerys brought Lady Glover to the Hall of Deepwood Motte and informed the tribesmen under Khazar to immediately surround Deepwood Motte and set up a siege. Asha Greyjoy, who had already led people into Deepwood Motte, finally found something wrong. She looked unhappy. Jack, Hector, your behavior has been a little abnormal since just now. What are you hiding from me? What about the others? Where have they gone? Hector looked unhappy. Sir, don't ask. You will know when you enter the castle hall. HMPH, come on, arrest them. Asha was too lazy to talk nonsense with the two of them. She directly asked her men to take them down first. Anyway, she had 600 people behind her and was not afraid of any situation. However, the situation was obviously not normal. At this time, a large number of wildlings gathered outside Deepwood Motte, as many as thousands of people, many of whom were spearwomen holding wooden spears. Asha narrowed her eyes and said sternly, "The wildlings have captured Deepwood Motte. Are you all prisoners?" At this time, Asha had guessed something. Obviously, the sea monster flag outside was to lure her in. Although I don't know how you lost Deepwood Motte, I have already imagined how useless you are. Do you think you can defeat 600 Ironmen with these thousands of old and young women and children? Seeing Asha's disdainful expression, Hector opened his mouth and was about to say something when a terrifying roar came from the sky. Hiss! Drogon, who was 7 meters long, fell from the sky. The sudden appearance of Drogon scared the Ironman, including Asha, and she looked at Hector in disbelief. Helplessly, Hector could only say, "The wildlings alone are certainly not the opponents of our Ironman, but since you left, the situation in the north has changed a bit." At this moment, the door of the Hall of Deepwood Motte was pushed open, and 2 giants in armor walked out first, followed by a girl in a white dress. Mrs. Glover, who was originally under house arrest, followed the girl like a maid. The nobility of the girl seemed to be born, and combined with the giant beast that fell from the sky beside her, Asha instantly guessed the identity of the girl. In fact, it is difficult to hide the identity of that silver hair and purple eyes. You must be Asha Greyjoy. You are really heroic. No wonder Jack wants you to give birth to a child for him. Asha's face changed. It was nothing for the other party to guess her identity, but who is Jack? Why did he want her to give birth to a child for Jack? Seeing this, Hector told Asha about what happened in the north after she returned to attend the King's Smoot, and asked Asha about the result of the King's Smoot. When talking about the King's Smoot, Asha looked at the girl not far away who was staring at her and stroking the dragon's neck. A slightly crazy idea appeared in her mind. Chapter 172, a more thorough conquest. Finally, Asha was invited to the Hall of Deepwood Motte. At this time, Daenerys sat in the first seat in the castle hall, Asha sat on the right, and Lady Glover sat on the left. In addition, there were several newly promoted nobles who were canonized by Khazar. Asha glanced at the 2 giants guarding the gate and Drogon who was guarding Dany, and her mind became more determined. "Your Majesty, are there any other giants? I heard that you have 3 dragons. Where are the other 2? Daenerys smiled slightly. "Don't call me queen. Call me queen, or according to your custom, you can call me queen. As for your question, it's okay to tell you, there are hundreds of giants. As for my 3 dragons, except for the largest one, Drogon, the other 2 are controlled by my son and daughter. The 2 little guys are natural Sea-Kings and natural dragon riders. And now my husband is in the last Hearth City. His dragon is twice as big as Drogon, and is smarter and more brutal." Daenerys secretly exaggerated Jack's strength. The number of giants was directly doubled by her, but the effect was also obvious. Asha secretly took a deep breath. This power was stronger than she imagined, even much stronger, completely beyond her expectations. "May I ask who your husband is?" "Jack Poseidon, the Conqueror. If you don't want the Greyjoy family to become the next Hall family, surrender is the best choice." Daenerys smiled. Of course Asha knew the Hall family, the royal family of the Iron Islands, that was destroyed by Aegon Targaryen. Now the real dragons have returned to Westeros again, but the Targaryen family is no longer the protagonist. Instead, it is the Poseidon family? Why? Asha looked at Daenerys with some doubts. She didn't understand why Daenerys, who obviously had 3 dragons, wanted to marry that Jack Poseidon instead of letting Jack Poseidon marry into the family. Seeing Asha's eyes, Daenerys instantly understood her thoughts. Are you wondering why I want to marry Poseidon instead of sitting on the Iron Throne myself? Asha didn't say anything, but her expression said it all. She really didn't understand that Basie couldn't get the right sister. You haven't seen him in person. He is talented and extremely beautiful. He is also a descendant of Defy. His bloodline is as pure as mine. Our children are all dragon riders. The bloodline of the Targaryen family is the most important. And his dragon is an ancient species, far more powerful than my 3 children. He is ambitious and has the means to plan. So even if I marry him, I can continue the bloodline of my family and become the queen of an empire spanning 2 continents. Why not? Daenerys did not tell Asha about the news of the sea god. Some things don't need to be said too much. Saying too much will make others have thoughts that they shouldn't have. The information she said was enough to attract Asha Greyjoy. What do you mean by letting me give birth to a child for your man? My appearance is far worse than yours. Asha asked the question that she was most concerned about. Although she was not ugly, she was definitely not very beautiful, so she always felt that she had been targeted by someone for a long time, and the purpose was to gain power in the Iron Islands. Yara Greyjoy in the TV series gives people a feeling of being fierce, but not heroic, but rather sloppy. But in fact, Asha Greyjoy is thin, has long legs, short black hair, and has a strong personality, is arrogant, and is a hot pepper. If it weren't for Euron's participation in the king's election meeting to seize her inheritance of the Iron Islands, and Victarion took advantage of her absence to empty the warehouse in Pike City to trick her, she would never discuss marrying someone else with Daenerys here, but would directly lead people to fight out of the siege with dragon flames, and then return to the Iron Islands to gather soldiers to fight back for revenge. But unfortunately, the fact is that she was almost dug a pit and buried by her 2 uncles, and even married to an 89-year-old man by Euron Greyjoy. To put it bluntly, what else can she do besides drooling on her face? This is a war of conquest, a more thorough conquest than Aegon Targaryens. All 7 kingdoms will bear the surname of Poseidon, and the prince will be the new lord above the duke. Daenerys explained with a smile. Prince? Asha was very surprised. It was obvious that this word was both familiar and unfamiliar to her. Generally speaking, since Westeros was conquered by Aegon, the word prince has mostly appeared in Dawn, and only the rulers of Dawn call themselves princes and princesses. At the beginning, the crown territories directly under the dragon family were generally governed by the king himself. The king's prince brother served as the king's hand or the commander of the capital garrison, and had no territory. It was not until the Baratheon family ascended the throne and Renly and Stannis were called princes that there was a precedent for princes who were directly granted territories. One is the Prince of Dragonstone, and the other is the Prince of Stormlands of Baratheon. But their prince and duke are 2 titles combined in one person, such as Renly Baratheon, who is both Prince Renly and Duke Renly of Stormlands. But now Asha heard from Daenerys that she wanted to separate the prince and the duke. The prince is the prince, the duke is the duke, and the prince is above the duke, and is the biggest person in charge of the fiefdom. If this is really done, it is equivalent to the royal family directly controlling the 7 kingdoms, which is a huge gap from the current political system. Asha began to hesitate. First of all, her child with Jack must have the surname Poseidon. At that time, the child will be the prince of the Iron Islands, and the Greyjoy family will most likely become the Duke family of the Iron Islands. But the problem lies here. Now, in addition to Asha, the Greyjoy family has 3 uncles, Euron, Victarion, and Argument, who are eligible to inherit. After they inherit the Greyjoy family, they will definitely not be willing to let the Greyjoy family become a second-class family. After being a ruler for hundreds of years, they suddenly became one level weaker than others. Although they are in a position below one person, the gap between them cannot be simply explained. Another point is that, in this way, the difficulty of the conquest war will be much greater. You are clearly trying to change all the families by doing this. In this way, the Duke of the South will definitely fight to the death. Frowning? What doubts do you have? Tell me. My man is definitely worthy of you. It is your honor to have his child. Daenerys unconsciously took out the airs of a big wife at this time. Asha said her considerations. If she failed, wouldn't she be completely in vain and get nothing? Think about it, if the war fails in the end, she will either be killed or driven out of Westeros. She still wants to fight back to the Iron Islands. Whether as the heir of Greyjoy, or as the Lady of Poseidon, she will fight back, castrate Euron Greyjoy, and then betroth him to an old woman. If she can't give birth to a child, she will be executed. I'm lie. When I come to lighter play, I will treat you to beansticks, ground eggs, and Chinese cabbage stewed with eggplant. Chapter 173 Marriage Trading Magic. After hearing Asher's thoughts, Daenerys understood what Asher Greyjoy was worried about. Don't worry about this. When the time comes, you can just give birth to 2 boys. One will become the Prince of the Iron Islands, and the other will become the Duke of the Iron Islands. As for your 2 uncles, there is no need to worry. The bigger the fist, the more powerful it is. If you feel uneasy, just arrange a random crime to execute them. Daenerys said that you can just give birth to 2 boys. Isn't it easy to solve? After giving birth to Alexander and Elizabeth, Daenerys' battery was fully charged every time she went to Jack to charge. Jack told her that he was going to give birth to another second son, and then give him the surname of Targaryen, make him the Prince of Dragonstone, and then turn the king's territory into a dragon territory under the control of Dragonstone. Therefore, Daenerys has not wasted any electricity since then, and all of it has been absorbed into the battery. War cannot rely on dragons alone, especially dragons that have not grown up yet. Otherwise, even if the war is won, the kingdom will not be stable. Asher expressed her concerns. Of course, war cannot rely on dragons, nor on a strong military. War tests comprehensive strength, and we also have a foundation in Essos. We are not short of money and people. 5,000 unsullied, and 3 ships of gold will be shipped here soon. In fact, there is not only gold, but also a large amount of high quality grain. Grain is also a very important material for the North, which has just experienced war. Hearing this, Asher Greyjoy was a little surprised. She didn't expect that they actually had a foundation in another continent. She thought that Jack and Daenerys came directly to Westeros with a small group of people, and then relied on the current strength of the dragon. In fact, it is true. Jack really came to Westeros alone at first. He originally just wanted to solve the trouble of Jon Snow, and then win over Dawn. Who knew that he happened to catch up with the Battle of Castle Black, and then Jon Snow died directly under the arrow of the little boy instead of Ygritte. Then Jack took advantage of the situation to accept 100,000 wildlings, and then slowly gained a foothold in the north. Of course, the most important thing is that the 3-eyed crow traveled back from the future to invade Jack's consciousness. As a result, he was bitten by Poseidon, who also came from the future, leaving only half of his body, and at the same time, helped the current Poseidon to open the power of faith. All this seemed to be destined. Perhaps history began to change from the moment Jack traveled through, like a new parallel world. But the 3-eyed crow from the future obviously didn't know this new history. So it broke into Jack's consciousness, and wanted to correct Jack, the outlier. In the end, he was almost bitten to death by Poseidon, who became the god of the ocean and thunder in the future of the new timeline. If the 3-eyed crow did not invade Jack's consciousness, Poseidon might not be able to find the trick to enter the river of faith for thousands of years or even his entire life. But the appearance of the 3-eyed crow shaped the future god Poseidon, allowing the current Poseidon to master the trick to enter the river of faith in advance. Asher Greyjoy nodded heavily. Okay, in that case, I'll take a gamble with you. I'll marry Jack Poseidon and give him 2 children. Similarly, you guarantee that the child will become the Prince of the Iron Islands, and at the same time, you must guarantee that the Greyjoy family will still be the Duke of the Iron Islands. Daenerys nodded with satisfaction, and a deal was reached. At the same time, there was also one more enemy, Euron Greyjoy of the Iron Islands. After taking down Asher Greyjoy, Daenerys no longer needed to stay in Deepwood Motte. She left the 200 Sons of Winter, Wang Wang, and Zion Bey to Lady Glover. Now Deepwood Motte must always be on guard against the attacks of the Ironmen. Not only Deepwood Motte, but also Bear Island. After learning that Euron had returned to the Iron Islands, Jack also sent 200 Sons of Winter to garrison Bear Island. In addition, Shadow Tower and Eastwatch also arranged 200 people each to protect the important towns on the west and east coasts. Now the Ironman will definitely plunder the western coast, while the eastern coast should be wary of the White Harbor fleet. After all, Jack is not sure which side the White Harbor stands on now. Before leaving, Daenerys told Lady Glover that, if she encountered an attack by the Ironman, she should immediately summon her vassals to resist, and not forget to use ravens to ask for help. Deepwood Mott must not be lost. Then Daenerys took Asher and nearly 1,000 Ironmen to the last half. At this time, Euron Greyjoy also found that Asher Greyjoy was missing. On the Salt Throne of Pike City, Euron was leaning on his seat with his eyes closed, thinking. His blue lips were eating the grapes handed over by the Salt Concubine, and the relatively tender flesh was tasted back and forth in Euron's mouth. Dong dong dong. After getting Euron's signal, a person came to Euron, and the Salt Concubine put away the grapes and left. Your Majesty, the information you want has been collected. Asher Greyjoy has fled to Deepwood Mott. In addition, the current situation in Westeros is chaotic. The Tyrell family, which was originally married to the Iron Throne, has returned to Highgarden, and it is said that the dragon has appeared in the north again. You mean that the little woman of the Targaryen family has returned to Westeros? Euron was a little surprised. When he led the fleet back, he just heard that she had liberated Astapor, and since then he has rarely heard of her. Yes, her name is Daenerys Targaryen, and now she is married to Jack Poseidon. We don't know much about this Jack Poseidon. We only know that he is a descendant of Blackfire and has a dragon. Euron laughed. I'm really lucky. Ha 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 ha. Euron couldn't help laughing. Of course he knew what the descendant of Blackfire meant. It was just a lineage of illegitimate children of the Targaryen family back then. It is lucky for a bastard to hatch a dragon, but his control over the dragon is definitely not as strong as that of Daenerys Targaryen, a pure dragon bloodline. At that time, he will be able to blow the dragon horn, control the dragon of the descendant of Blackfire, and then marry Daenerys, directly obtain 4 dragons, and then the whole Westeros will be his. Blowing the dragon horn will burn a person's internal organs, but if the magic power is strong enough, the dragon horn can be controlled. Euron was once dreamed of by the three-eyed raven in his youth, but because his inner world was too violent, the three-eyed raven gave up on him. Later, after he was expelled by Balon Greyjoy, he once arrived in the Shadowland and learned how to obtain magic from the warlock there. The blue lips are the result of his frequent drinking of the water of Night Shadow. Although this gave him magic power, the side effects of the water of Night Shadow also made him more brutal. Chapter 174. Euron is ready to kill everyone. However, although Euron wanted to kill Jack and then control Jack's dragon to reach the peak of his life, it did not mean that he had lost his mind. Now he did not know how big Jack's dragon was, nor how much power Jack had under him, and he had not yet secured his position as the king of the Iron Islands. So he had to stabilize his throne first, eliminate the threats posed by Victarion Greyjoy and Aeron Greyjoy, and not let Asher Greyjoy go. She must be captured and sent to the castle of Eri. Thinking of this, Euron had a plan in mind, and then he asked someone to call his brother Victarion Greyjoy over. When Victarion learned that Euron was calling him, he immediately had a bad premonition, but no matter what, Euron was now the king of the Iron Islands. So Victarion followed Euron's people to the throne room of Pike City, where Euron had obviously been waiting for a long time. Brother, you are finally here. I have been waiting for you for a long time. Please take a seat, Euron said with a smile on his face. Victarion did not relax his vigilance because of Euron Greyjoy's smile. Instead, the alarm in his heart sounded loudly, and he felt that his brother was up to no good. To be honest, Victarion felt that the brothers who died young in the family were all caused by Euron Greyjoy, but there was no direct evidence. Your Majesty, do you have something to ask me? Victarion asked softly. Euron looked at his brother who was as strong as an ox, and felt very sorry that he didn't kill him at the beginning, but it was not too late now. You know that I married Asher Greyjoy to Eri, right? Yes, what's wrong? Victarion was even more unhappy and vigilant with Euron. After all, Asher was the daughter of his eldest brother. How could she marry an 89-year-old man? In Victarion's view, this was clearly an attempt to force Asher away. If Asher accepted her fate, she would lose the qualification to marry other nobles, to regain the Iron Islands. If Asha didn't accept her fate, it would be against the will of the King of the Iron Islands, which would be a rebellion, and Euron would be able to continue to control Asha Greyjoy. She ran away, disobeying the king's will, and taking a group of her supporters with her, so I need you to bring her back. Victarion immediately had a bad feeling. Sure enough, Euron continued, Asha has about 1,000 people, no more than 1,000, and she has already fled to Deepwood Motte. You take your people, and make sure to bring her back. Victarion's face didn't look good. He knew that Euron was consuming the power in his hands. The nobles who supported him only had a little more than 1,000 people, which was not much better than Asha. But at this time, Euron's face no longer had the smile just now, but a cold face. As long as Victarion dared not agree, he would directly take Victarion down on the grounds of not obeying orders. Victarion obviously knew Euron's plan, so he could only agree. Okay, I understand. I'll take people to bring Asha back. Euron then showed a smug smile, obviously very satisfied with Victarion's statement. Soon, Victarion walked out of Pike City with an ugly face. After returning to his residence, Victarion immediately called the noble lords who supported him. After speaking out Euron Greyjoy's request, the lords who supported him immediately scolded Euron as a beast. Euron is indeed a beast. In fact, for the lords of the Iron Islands, Euron Greyjoy is indeed not a qualified lord or king. But in the face of interests, the lords of the Iron Islands made different choices. Some chose to support Victarion or Asha, another chose to accept the benefits and fish in troubled waters, and the last part firmly chose Euron Greyjoy. After all, the golden gems that Euron Greyjoy took out were not fake. Only when there is no interest involved, there will be honor and responsibility. Victarion, he is draining your strength and wants to kill you all. We can't let him do what he wants. Chico said to Victarion seriously. Victarion was tall and mighty, with a broad chest like a bull and a flat belly like a boy. Although his hair was grey, he was still a capable commander. In battle, he wore heavy armor, held a huge axe, and wore a sea monster helmet. He fought fiercely, but he was calm, and respected the enemies who showed courage in battle. At the same time, he also respected his brother Balon very much. This is also the reason why some lords chose to support Victarion. They believed in Victarion's fighting spirit. Victarion looked at Chico. Do you have any good ideas? He looked at Chico with expectation. Chico was a captain who supported him. Although he was not a lord, he was brought by Victarion because of his flexible mind. Chico thought for a moment, then asked, do you know how many people Miss Asha has? I don't know, but at most 1,000, at least 600. Chico nodded, with a little madness on his face. We can pretend to capture Miss Asha, and then join forces with her to attack the Iron Islands. As long as we succeed in killing Euron, we can even incorporate his warships, and rebuild the glory of the Iron Fleet. When Euron dies, you can continue to find a suitable person for Asha to marry, and then become the king of the Iron Islands yourself, killing two birds with one stone. Victarion immediately showed his heartbeat. He was sure that he could persuade Asha to join forces. Because if Asha didn't agree, she would be captured and returned to the Iron Islands to marry the old man Ali sooner or later. Unless he could find a great noble to marry her. But to be honest, Victarion didn't think that any noble would like the wild Asha. The nobles on the mainland all like delicate women with long hair. And the nobles on the mainland have an instinctive resistance to the Iron Race, and this resistance comes from the long-term plunder of the Iron Race. Only a fool would think of marrying Asha to take back the Iron Islands. So Victarion was sure that he could make Asha join him in taking back the Salt Throne. As long as Euron Greyjoy was killed, he could use Asha's marriage as an excuse. By then, he could find a good young man for Asha Greyjoy to marry, so that he would not disappoint his elder brother's expectations of him. Victarion could not help but be fascinated by the scene of himself sitting on the Salt Throne. Besides, he could also get rid of Euron Greyjoy, the insidious and cunning thug. It was a three bads at one deal. Okay, let's do it. You go and notify our people immediately, and ask them to gather quickly. Victarion is now the commander of the Iron Fleet. Although the Iron Fleet suffered heavy losses in the rebellion of Balon, it still has nearly 2,000 people. This is different from ordinary longships. It is a real warship. The largest one, the Invincible Iron Victory, is 40 meters long and its speed is not inferior to that of a 30-meter sailing ship. It is Victarion's Mount. Chapter 175. How many fleets does the drowned god have? The Iron Fleet quickly assembled and left King's Harbor, heading for the stony coast with 2,000 men. This time, Victarion also brought the weapons he had moved from the warehouse in Pike on board, and when he distributed some of them to Asher's men, he could increase the chances of success. Euron planned to take advantage of Victarion's absence to lavishly reward his key men, eliminate dissidents, and win over the island's great lords. When Victarion and Asher were almost done fighting, and the power on the island was almost all under Euron's control, he would directly arrange for Victarion and Asher to stay in the north. Euron looked at the back of the Iron Fleet leaving, sneered, and pointed the finger at Aeron Greyjoy first. When Aeron was young, he was a lazy and vulgar drunkard. Once, he used his longship Yellow Rainstorm to bet with someone for a group of goats, saying that he could put out the fire in the hall just by peeing, and then he ate goats for a year. During the Greyjoy Rebellion, Aeron's longship sank, and he almost drowned. The experience of escaping death revived his spirit, and from then on, Aeron devoted himself to worshipping the drowned god. He became cold and abstinent, without any sense of humor, and lived a hermit-like life on the beach. Aeron was very prestigious among the Ironborn, and his monks, the drowned men, obeyed his orders. So Euron took advantage of Victarion's absence to directly eliminate Aeron Greyjoy, to prevent him from leading his monks and Victarion to unite against him. You go and inform Aeron Greyjoy that I'm waiting for him on the Serenity. I want to build some temples for the drowned god. Euron's men took the order and went to invite Aeron Greyjoy to the Serenity. At this time, Aeron was studying some spells passed down by the drowned god. Since the appearance of the red comet, the magic in the air has become thicker and thicker, and he feels that some spells have been mastered. Just when Aeron was about to do an experiment, a man suddenly rushed in. High Priest Aeron, His Majesty Euron invites you to the Serenity to discuss the expansion of the Temple of the Drowned God. Aeron's face remained unchanged, but he was a little scared. In his memory, when he was about 5 or 6 years old, Euron would often climb onto his bed before he went to bed and do something unforgivable to him. But due to his fear of Euron, these things have been buried deep in his mind, and he has not told anyone, but sometimes he still has nightmares. Later, after he believed in the drowned god, this situation has improved a lot. At least he doesn't have nightmares often. But now Euron asked him to go to the Serenity, which immediately awakened his dusty fear. I don't have time recently. The drowned god is calling me. I will go there by myself when I have time. You go back first. Aeron's words did not have any effect. Looking at the several burly men, Aeron sighed and still had to face his fear. Afterwards, Aeron followed the guards to the Serenity. Serenity was worthy of its name. No one spoke on board, only the sound of work. It was said that the tongues of all the people had been cut off. After entering the cabin, Euron was waiting for him with his legs crossed. Brother, do you want to discuss the expansion of the drowned temple with me? Aeron expected that Euron really wanted to discuss the expansion of the drowned temple with him. But things did not go as he wished. Euron obviously did not intend to discuss the expansion of the drowned temple with him. Euron was an atheist and had no respect even for the drowned god. After being crowned the king of the Iron Island some time ago, he urinated directly into the sea and said that if the drowned god was dissatisfied, he could come to him. For Euron, the drowned god. How many fleets does the drowned god have? Let's put the temple of the drowned god aside for now. What is it? I came to you to tell you that the monks under your command are armed forces, which is not allowed in the laws of the Iron Islands, so I plan to recruit those monks. Euron's words made Aeron's face change drastically. I don't understand. How can those monks be armed forces? They are just believers, and which law of the Iron Islands does not allow it? Please enlighten me, Your Majesty. Euron chuckled, and then couldn't help laughing. Euron's wanton and humiliating laughter echoed on the quiet Serenity. Aeron, what do you think? Euron poured himself a glass of blood-red wine. Why are you still as naive as before? It seems that the drowned god has not made your brain smarter. In the Iron Islands, the words of the king of the Iron Islands are the law. Do you understand now? Euron gave a look, and the two mute crew members immediately controlled Aeron Greyjoy. Euron, what are you going to do? Aren't you afraid that others will accuse you of killing your father? Eren shouted loudly. But Euron didn't feel it at all. The word parricide has the same meaning as filial piety in the ancient Celestial Empire. If you are labeled with the words parricide or filial piety, you will be secretly despised for the rest of your life. But that's all. It's just a moral standard word. Now almost everyone in the Iron Islands knows that Euron assassinated Balin, but who dares to say it in the face of the temptation of interests and military threats? Euron stood up with a smile, then stood up and went to the cabinet behind him and took out a ceramic bottle from the cabinet. Eren, I heard that you have reached the threshold of magic after so many years of hard work. Euron opened the lid of the porcelain bottle, then took a deep sip from the bottle with an intoxicated look on his face. The taste of night shadow water is still so tempting. This is a good thing, Eren. As your brother, I will give it to you, hoping to help you cross that hurdle. Eren knew what the hurdle Euron was talking about was. When the magic power in the human body reaches a certain critical point, it can be released through spells to reach the state of casting. The concentration of magic in the world is getting higher and higher. In the future, more people will definitely cross this hurdle, such as Eren now. If Euron doesn't bother him, he will be able to take this step in less than a week. People like Eren who rely on faith to practice hard are very resistant to things like night shadow water that are very addictive. Night shadow water contains magic power, which has been certified by Aesir and the academic title. There is no doubt that it is a tonic for practicing magic. Compared with its various side effects, the magic power it brings is obviously more attractive to people who practice hard. But this is only before the recovery of magic power. With the current crazy increase in magic power concentration, it has completely caught up with the magic growth rate of drinking shadow water day and night. So except for those who are already addicted, few people will touch shadow water, and even many people who are not addicted have begun to quit this thing. As if he saw Eren's resistance, Euron began to force feed him. Drink, drink, this is good stuff. Don't waste it. It can make you ecstatic. Every time I drink it, I can see Balin and his other 3 brothers who were killed by me. Ha 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 ha. But I didn't kill the eldest brother with my own hands. I don't have the courage to face him directly. He ha ha ha. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.